Chapter 2541, Master of the Death Sea, 3. Unfortunately, Len Ruoxue had made up her mind this time. How could she let her escape so easily? After she dodged it once, the ball of fire that was rather spiritual started to chase after her. When the Death Sea Master saw that he couldn't avoid it, his anger started to rise. Beauty, you forced me to do this. Before the Master of the Death Sea exploded in anger, he even greeted Len Ruoxue politely. However, Len Ruoxue did not even look her in the eye. Upon seeing this, the Death Sea Master did not hold back anymore. In the next moment, the Master of the Dead Sea shattered into pieces in front of Len Ruoxue and the rest. It turned into tiny bits and disappeared into the air. She's escaping. Len Ruoxue was dumbfounded. We're not sure. Ming Ji said with an apologetic look. The Death Sea Master had always been cunning, so they did not know how many tricks he had up his sleeve. Even Minga and the others didn't know. Len Ruoxue was a little depressed. All of a sudden, Len Ruoxue and the rest felt the ground beneath their feet shake violently. This sudden, earth-shaking, and mountain-shaking shake caused them to float in the air vigilantly. However, in the blink of an eye, the entire ground started to surge upwards again. Len Ruoxue and the rest had no choice but to continue rising. However, the ground seemed to have sensed them and kept following them. At this moment, a pitch-black hole appeared on the ground. Black chi swirled around it, giving it a sinister and terrifying appearance. Following that, a few huge claws extended out from the hole. Each of the claws was as thick as an adult's waist. There were suction cups on the claws, and on each suction cup, there were 2 rows of sharp teeth that opened and closed in a devouring motion. In the next second, the claws flew towards Len Ruoxue. Shuer, be careful. When Uncle Long and the others saw this, they were extremely worried. They used all their strength to teleport towards Len Ruoxue's direction. However, the moment they moved, they were sensed by those huge claws. A few of them immediately changed their direction and attacked Uncle Long and the others. Uncle Long, be careful. Don't worry about me. Seeing this, Len Ruoxue hurriedly shouted. She quickly gathered a few fireballs in her hands and threw them at the claws. The giant claws sensed the threat of the fireballs. After a moment of hesitation, they immediately changed their direction and attacked the others. Len Ruoxue saw that those disgusting claws had actually retreated and decided to take the initiative to attack. A sword that was as thin as a cicada's wing and exuded a frosty aura appeared in Len Ruoxue's slender hand. Without any hesitation, Len Ruoxue shot out several meteor sword showers that turned into specks of starlight and flew towards the claws that were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. There were many meteor sword showers, and no matter how hard the claws tried to dodge, many of them still landed on their bodies. The claws were in pain and immediately retreated back into the ground. What kind of monster is this? Uncle Long couldn't help but ask curiously when he saw the claws retreat. Dead Sea's deep octopus, the pet of the Lord of the Dead Sea. Minga said honestly. An octopus? Len Ruoxue understood. He was quite big. An octopus of this size was definitely an overlord of the deep sea, invincible in the sea. The octopuses in the sea are very annoying. Uncle Long said with a look of disdain. Although he was also an overlord of the sea, he was also helpless against the difficult octopus. Sigh. Who asked him to have so many claws? The octopuses in the sea are quite annoying. What do we do now? Len Ruoxue looked at the crowd and asked. Thanks, Uncle Long and the others were not familiar with the Dead Sea, so they naturally could not think of a good idea. So, everyone turned their heads to Ming Ji and the others. Minga and the others immediately felt a headache. The power of the Master of the Death Sea was undoubted. Other than his lord, it was difficult for them to pose a threat to the Master of the Death Sea. However, his lord was clearly trapped by the Master of the Death Sea. Hence, saving his lord had become a top priority. Len Ruoxue's thoughts were the same as theirs. However, how to save the demon was a huge problem. According to Ming Song and the others, the Dead Sea was located underground, and it was also the true base camp of the Lord of the Dead Sea. In the Dead Sea, other than the Dead Sea's pet, the Dead Sea deep octopus, there were also many overlords of the sea who were under the command of the Lord of the Dead Sea. If they went into the sea, they would not have any advantage at all. They might even become fish that walked right into the net, allowing the Lord of the Dead Sea to do whatever he wanted. Leng Ruoxue also knew that the sea was the world of the sea beasts. If they, a bunch of non-swimmers, went down, they would be sending their heads to the sea beasts. However, if they did not go down, and the Lord of the Dead Sea did not come up, such a stalemate would be extremely disadvantageous to them. The evildoer and the others were still in the hands of that dead Renyao. If that dead Renyao's bestial nature was triggered, wouldn't the evildoer's innocence be lost? No. She had to think of a way to force the Lord of the Dead Sea to come up. Leng Ruoxue thought about it in detail and glanced at the Dead Sea city that was riddled with holes. The Dead Sea city was already in a state of ruin. After that, the Lord of the Dead Sea caused a huge earthquake. The current Dead Sea city was simply too horrible to look at. In that case, there was no need to keep the Dead Sea city. The moment this thought appeared in her mind, Leng Ruoxue immediately moved Uncle Long and the rest into the house. Then, she took out a few explosive balls and threw them into the crack that looked like the mouth of a giant beast. Following that, Leng Ruoxue teleported out of the Dead Sea city. After a few loud bangs, the dilapidated Dead Sea city became history in the 9 Nether prison as it fell into the Dead Sea. The dark Dead Sea finally surfaced. The area of the Dead Sea was extremely large. After the Dead Sea city fell to the bottom of the sea, the water of the Dead Sea surged up without any obstruction. In an instant, it flooded the land within 100 miles of the Dead Sea city. After the water of the Death Sea had calmed down, Leng Ruoxue found a safe place to land. Then, she moved Uncle Long and the rest out. This is the Dead Sea. Looking at the black ocean in front of him, Uncle Long sighed. The Dead Sea was much bigger than the endless ocean. However, it was obvious that this was not a good place. The ocean was black, and the most important thing was that it emitted a foul smell, which was unbearable. Young Lady Leng, the Dead Sea has surfaced. What should we do now? Minga asked helplessly. What is the Death Sea Master most afraid of? Leng Ruoxue asked. He should be afraid of fire. The beasts in the water are all afraid of fire. Uncle Long interrupted before Ming Ge could answer. Are you afraid of fire? Then let's dry the water of the Death Sea. I don't believe that the Lord of the Death Sea can still keep his eyes closed. Leng Ruoxue said fiercely. Ah! Hearing Leng Ruoxue's answer, Ming Ge and the other local tyrants of the 9 Nether prison were speechless. Dry the water of the Death Sea. That was a good idea, but was that even possible? The Dead Sea was so big, what kind of fire could dry this place up? How much fire would he have to use? With such a grand undertaking, Minga and the others thought that this was clearly a heavenly night lake. But then, the many phoenixes and fire dragons that appeared in front of them made them widen their eyes in shock, and their mouths could not close for a long time. What was he trying to do? Ming Ge and the others were dumbfounded and could not speak for a long time. That. Could it be what they were thinking? Chapter 2542, The First Negotiation, 1, Oh my God. If it was really as they thought, then it would be too terrifying. Ming Ge and the others, who had finally regained their senses, couldn't help but shiver. They tried hard to recall if they had offended Leng Ruoxue in any way. As for Nether Sword, who had once offended her, he was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. Oh. It's a good thing that she didn't really want to kill me. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would have turned into ashes long ago. Following Leng Ruoxue's command, the phoenixes and fire dragons started to breathe fire towards the surface of the Dead Sea. The scene was extremely grand and intimidating. Not only were Nethersword and the others scared half to death, even Uncle Long and the others were stunned. To be honest, this was the first time they had seen such a scene. It seemed like Shuai was really angry. Yes. Leng Ruoxue was furious. The consequences must be severe. Didn't the damned Renyao shrink back? Then she would think of a way to force him out. She didn't believe that the damned Renyao would still be able to stay in the Dead Sea after drying the water. Although she knew that her side would suffer losses in this way, it didn't matter. She had medicinal pills, enough for all the phoenixes and fire dragons to recover their divine power. In short, no matter how long it takes, she must force the Lord of the Dead Sea out. Otherwise, how can she save the demon? Later on, what Nether Sword and the others saw was the phoenixes and fire dragons in the sky, elegantly breathing fire as they poured medicinal pills into their mouths. Seeing them madly eating medicinal pills, Nether Sword and the others, who had barely enough medicinal pills in their bags, were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. It was a pity that they did not have the fire element. The phoenixes and fire dragons in the sky were tossing and turning with all their might. The flames on the surface of the sea had never been extinguished from the beginning. As for the Dead Sea beasts who initially didn't take this action to heart, as the number of days the flames burned increased, and the sea water became hotter and hotter, they slowly began to be unable to bear it. Master, Master, save us! The sea beasts knelt before the Lord of the Dead Sea and cried. Everyone calm down. It's just some flames. What can they do to dry up the sea water? The Master of the Dead Sea, who was in his deep sea palace, looked at his subordinates in exasperation. He did not know what to say. In fact, she was also slightly uneasy, but she absolutely did not believe that the beauty outside had the ability to roast the entire Dead Sea dry. She thought that it wouldn't be long before the phoenixes and fire dragons were exhausted. However, how could there be so many phoenixes and fire dragons around the beauty? She couldn't help but feel deeply puzzled. After hearing her words, the sea beasts all cried out, Master, the sea is getting hotter. If this continues, we'll be cooked. Hearing this, the Master of the Death Sea immediately put on a straight face and said unhappily, Cooked? It was so easy to roast you. How come I didn't know that your defense is so weak? Your Highness, we're sea beasts after all. Fire is our natural enemy. A large octopus said with a wronged expression. Thanks, so what? Don't be scared by that woman outside. She wants to dry the Dead Sea. Isn't that a fool's dream? Therefore, you must hold on and not let the Dead Sea's name be tarnished. The Death Sea Master said with a face of disappointment. Actually, she wasn't too sure about Leng Ruoxue's methods. However, she wouldn't lose face. She wouldn't allow others to destroy her own prestige. Furthermore, she didn't believe that Leng Ruoxue could really dry up the entire Dead Sea. Moreover, she still had a hostage in her hands. Therefore, she was confident. Master, we'll try our best. All the sea beasts had pitiful looks on their faces as they said weakly, Woo, it wasn't that they didn't want to be stronger, but they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to hold on. It should be known that none of the beasts in the sea liked fire as it was their natural enemy. Now that the entire surface of the Dead Sea was covered in scorching flames, they couldn't escape even if they wanted to. They could only hide in the deep sea and wait to be slaughtered. When would such a life end? Could there still be a head? They were not as optimistic as their master. To the sea beasts, the woman outside was truly too terrifying. They were all scared out of their wits. Especially when they heard from their boss, Dead Sea Xinjiang, that the woman was very powerful, their fear of Leng Ruoxue naturally deepened. As for their boss, Dead Sea Deep Shang, ever since he returned from the defeat, he had been cooped up in his lair without moving. It was unknown if he was sad or what, but he did not come out. This fact made them even more anxious. Since that's the case, go back to your posts. Remember, don't let the Divine Realm's people look down on you. The Death Sea Master warned with a serious expression. Yes. The sea beasts resentfully left. Since the matter had not been resolved, they could only obediently stay in their nests and wait for their deaths. Woo! The unknown fate left them at a loss. After his subordinates left, the master of the Death Sea smashed a small table beside him. His face was filled with rage and violence. This rage was naturally not because of his cowardly subordinates, but because of Leng Ruoxue and the others. She didn't expect that even though she had retreated to the Dead Sea and made a concession, those people outside were still chasing after her relentlessly. Were they trying to kill her? It was really too detestable. Fortunately, she had a hostage in her hands, so she wasn't too passive. Otherwise, she really didn't know what to do with those people outside. However, what worried her the most was the raging flames of anger burning outside. She hated fire but was also afraid of fire. Otherwise, when Leng Ruoxue released fire, she would not have retreated to the Dead Sea in a fit of anger and sent out Dead Sea Xinjiang. She thought that little Zhang's tough skin and thick flesh would be able to withstand it, but who knew that little Zhang would actually be defeated and return? Faced with such a reality, the master of the Death Sea was rather depressed. Then, she stood up and walked out of the palace, coming to a place covered with a transparent light net in the deep sea. That light net was one of her talents, called the devouring net. It was specially used to imprison people. It was very similar to a barrier, but it was lighter and more convenient. It could also absorb the dark power of others for its own use. And now, 3 young men were trapped in the devouring net. The 3 of them were the demon, Ming Ziyi, and Mu Li. When they saw that the master of the Death Sea had arrived, the 3 of them did not even bother with him. They only opened their eyes slightly before lowering their heads and whispering to each other. The master of the Death Sea was not angry when he saw this. He only laughed and said, "The future Nether Empress is truly a beauty. She has such soft skin and tender flesh, I'm very satisfied with her." Hearing this, the evildoer immediately raised his head, narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "What did you just say?" "Mistress Dark, I said that the future Nether Empress of our 9 Nether prison is a great beauty. Her skin is as white as snow, and I like her. She's my woman from now on." The master of the Dead Sea provoked fearlessly. When she saw the extraordinarily handsome man's expression change because of her words, she felt extremely satisfied. Such a feeling also reduced the anger in her heart by a lot. She knew that it was the right decision to come here. Chapter 2543, The First Negotiation, 2, You're Dreaming. The demon gritted his teeth. If he could, he really wanted to rush up and tear this damned Rinyao into pieces so that she wouldn't be an eyesore. However, such a thought obviously couldn't be realized now. Damn it! The demon was quite depressed. At this time, Ming Ziyi could not help but ask, "You've met the Nether Empress?" "That's impossible, right?" The Nether Empress was in Jiuyo City, and his lord had repeatedly warned him to protect her. Hence, his rationality told him that this transvestite would not have the chance to meet Leng Ruoxue. However, what disappointed him was that after hearing his question, the master of the Death Sea laughed smugly. "Not only has she seen me, she has also seen my naked body. But she took the initiative to strip me naked. Are you dreaming?" Ming Ziyi didn't believe her when she said that. The demon's face turned even darker. How should he put it? He definitely did not believe the words of the master of the Death Sea. However, he had not returned to 9 Serenities City for such a long time and Shuai would definitely be worried. She might have really come out to look for him. If that was the case, it would naturally explain why the master of the Death Sea would see her. At this moment, the evildoer regretted hiding it from Shuai. He should have told Shuai the truth. However, if he told the truth, he was afraid that Shuai would also come. Sigh. He was in a conflicted mood. But now, no matter what he thought, it seemed to be of no use. Ha ha ha. How could I be dreaming? To tell you the truth, Leng Ruoxue and I fell in love at first sight and we've already hooked up. After we've destroyed you all, we can live together and be a pair of immortals. The master of the Death Sea laughed arrogantly. Ming Ziyi only gave the delusional transvestite a disdainful look and ignored her. And even hooked up. He was daydreaming. It would be weird if Leng Ruoxue was interested in her. The demon didn't believe the words of the master of the Dead Sea even more. However, when he heard that a transvestite was fantasizing about his woman, the anger in his heart couldn't help but surge. If a pair of fire-spitting eyes could kill, the master of the Dead Sea would have died thousands of times. The Death Sea Master was done showing off and turned to leave in a good mood. After she left, Mu Li said with a guilty face, "My lord, it's all my fault. If you didn't save me, you wouldn't be in prison." What's the point of saying this now? The most important thing now is to find a way out. The demon deliberately said with a straight face. That's right. The most important thing is to find a way to get out. Otherwise, we will probably become food for the master of the Dead Sea, said Ming Zi. He could already feel that the net was slowly shrinking. With the three of them working together, they could still resist for a while, but if time passed and they used up too much dark power without any replenishment, they would really be in danger. Don't worry. This broken net won't be a threat to us for a while. After the demon finished speaking, he took out a few bottles of pills and gave them to Ming Zi and Mu Li. Ming Zi immediately felt more confident as if he had obtained a treasure. With these medicinal pills, he should be able to resist for quite a while. Master, is that demon Leng Ruoxue here too? Mu Li couldn't help but ask. He should be here. The demon gritted his teeth. It was impossible for the master of the Death Sea to be too far away from the Death Sea. Hence, Shuai must have arrived at the territory of the master of the Death Sea. Otherwise, that damned human demon would not have the chance to see Shuai. Then, Mu Li didn't dare to say anything. If the little devil lost a single hair, it would be his fault. Woo! He was so regretful. Why did he act so impulsively against the master of the Dead Sea? It was all his fault. Thanks, don't think too much, Shuai will be fine. The demon did not want to see his subordinate blaming himself at this time, so he could only comfort her. Besides, he also believed that with Shuai's means, it would not be easy for the wretched ladyboy to catch her. However, when he heard the wretched ladyboy taking liberties with his woman, the anger in his heart still rushed to the top of his head. When he had the chance, he would definitely cut the wretched ladyboy into 8 pieces. The evildoer who was imprisoned in the deep sea hated the Lord of the Dead Sea. Leng Ruoxue, who was at the shore of the Dead Sea, was still commanding the phoenixes and fire dragons to set fire in an orderly manner. After half a month of burning, the water near the sea was as hot as newly boiled water, and there was a faint umami in the sea. Is it seafood soup? Jiang Ning took a few deep breaths and said. You want to eat it? Leng Ruoxue raised her brows and asked indifferently. I don't want to. Jiang Ning shook his head. The water was so polluted. If he ate the food here, he would have a stomach ache. He didn't want to be abused. I just wanted to add some seasoning to the seafood soup to enhance the taste. Jiang Ning added. Then, he floated above the sea and scattered large amounts of colorful pills into the sea. What a waste. Seeing this, Nethersword couldn't help but ask. Waste? Then, should I let you eat? Hearing this, Jiang Ning handed a black pill to Nethersword. Ah. I'm not eating. I'm not eating. It's better to leave it for the beasts in the Dead Sea and that dead human monster to eat. When Nethersword heard this, he was so frightened that his face turned pale. Sob. After being with Leng Ruoxue and the others for so long, he naturally knew that these were all poison. How could he dare to eat them? You're the one who refused to eat it. Don't say I didn't give it to you. After Jiang Ning finished speaking, he returned to the bottom of the sea and continued to scatter the pills. Seeing Jiang Ning throw the pills into the sea, Nethersword's heart ached a little. Although they were poisonous pills that he couldn't eat, it wasn't a bad idea to keep them for his enemies. However, in the face of these fiendish people, he could not open his mouth to ask for it, so he could only obediently shut his mouth. As soon as Jiang Ning's pills entered the sea, a white mist immediately appeared in the sky above the Dead Sea. It even carried a burning smell. The beasts in the Dead Sea were in trouble as well. The seawater that was mixed with various kinds of poison had caused them to show different degrees of symptoms of poisoning. The more serious ones had even died on the spot. This situation was quickly reported to the Death Sea Master. The Master of the Death Sea was burning with rage. However, she was rational enough. She did not rush up to the surface to attack Len Ruoxue and the others. Instead, she had been racking her brains for a solution. After thinking for a long time, the Master of the Death Sea decided to try using a hostage. This was definitely a trump card that she had prepared to use only when she had no other choice. She would not use it unless she had no other choice. Unfortunately, she had used it in advance, which made her depressed. After making the decision, the Master of the Death Sea suppressed his hatred for flames and decided to negotiate with Len Ruoxue. When Len Ruoxue and the rest saw the waves on the sea surface becoming turbulent, they immediately became alert. Following that, they saw waves rising on the pitch-black sea surface and a woman in black clothes standing on the waves. The Master of the Dead Sea endured the boiling water under his feet and put on a calm and composed posture. He revealed a smile that he thought was mesmerizing and teased, "Beauty, I'm here. You must miss me." "Yup. I've missed you. I can't wait for you to die." Len Ruoxue returned a smile, and the two of them spoke as if they were having a casual conversation. Chapter 2544, The First Negotiation, 3, Ha ha ha. It's my honor for the beauty to think of me like this. The Death Sea Master laughed even more slyly. Len Ruoxue looked at the laughed Rinyao and wished she could burn him into ashes so that he wouldn't show off in front of her. Unfortunately, now wasn't the time. After all, the three evildoers might still be in the hands of this Rinyao. "Master of the Dead Sea, is the water under your feet not hot?" Uncle Long asked curiously. "Hot? What's hot? The temperature is just right. I'll take it that you're boiling water for me. Thank you for your hard work," the Death Sea Master said stubbornly. "Oh, really? It seems that my spirit beasts can work harder and let you enjoy a good sauna." Len Ruoxue laughed when she heard that. He even wanted to steam her. The Master of the Dead Sea was a little angry when she heard this. However, she was always able to maintain a good demeanor in front of a beauty. Hence, she still smiled and said, "There's no need to steam it. Although I'm not afraid of the heat, you have to think about those who are afraid of the heat. Don't forget, the mistress of the dark world is still a hostage in my hands. Wouldn't your heart ache if they were to be roasted?" "I don't feel heartache," Len Ruoxue said with a face of nonchalance. These words made the Master of the Dead Sea, who wanted to fight for the initiative, choke back her words. She even suspected that this beauty was forcefully snatched by the mistress of the dark world. Otherwise, why was it that when she mentioned that the mistress of the dark world was afraid of the heat, not only did the other party look like he didn't care, but she also heard the sound of teeth grinding? The Master of the Dead Sea was a little uncertain about the position of the dark mistress in Len Ruoxue's heart. If she did not care about the life and death of the dark mistress at all, then wouldn't she have worked for nothing? No. She had to get to the bottom of this. "Beauty, do you really not care about that man's life? He and his two subordinates are now in my hands," the Death Sea Master reminded. "So what? I don't accept any threats. If you think the hostage in your hands can threaten me, then you're wrong. There were so many men in this world. If he didn't have this, he could just find another one. And without the Dark Lord, with my strength, it won't be difficult for me to dominate Nine Nether Prison, don't you think?" Len Ruoxue replied with a smile. "That's true. Beauty, why don't we join hands and dominate the Nine Nether Prison?" After thinking for a while, the Master of the Death Sea said. "You? Why should I bring a transvestite like you along when I can do it myself? Humans and demons cannot cooperate, they must be destroyed. So, you can just wash up and wait for your death." Len Ruoxue gave the Master of the Dead Sea a disdainful look and said indifferently. "You. Beauty, it's not that easy to rule the Nine Nether Prison. Without me as your guide, you'll take many detours. More importantly, the Dark Mistress subordinates won't be convinced by you. The Master of the Dead Sea did not give up as he tried to convince Leng Ruoxue. He wanted to tie himself together with her. Unfortunately, Leng Ruoxue listened to his words and only sneered. She pointed at Ming Ji and the others and said, I have a guide. You can ask them if they will submit to me. We will follow Miss Ling's lead. Ming Song did not wait for the Death Sea Master to ask and took the initiative to express his attitude. Seeing this, Nether Sword and the others nodded. Their attitude proved Leng Ruoxue's words. The Mistress of the Dark World and the other two who were in the hands of the Master of the Dead Sea could not threaten them. When the Death Sea Master saw this, he was about to go crazy. Fuck. Was there no use for hostages? How did this happen? Could it be that these people really didn't care about the lives of the Mistress of the Dark World and the other two? No. She would never believe it so easily. You're really not afraid that he'll kill the three of them? The Master of the Death Sea continued to ask. Thanks, if you can really kill the Mistress of the Dark World, then go ahead and try. Ming Ji said with a look of disdain. Did he think that the Master of the Dead Sea didn't know that he didn't have the ability to kill the Mistress of the Dark World? He even dared to come up to them and threaten them with a hostage. Did he really think they were 3-year-old children? Even though I can't kill the Mistress of the Dark World, I can still kill the other two. So, you really don't regret it? The Death Sea Master still refused to give up. It's our honor to die for the Dark Lord and the future Nether Empress. Ming Song replied with determination. Then, he deliberately put on a noble and cold expression as he cast a sidelong glance at the Master of the Dead Sea. You damned Rinyao, you heard that? Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. You will regret this. You'll definitely regret it. The Master of the Dead Sea was furious. The negotiation had failed. However, the furious Master of the Death Sea did not waste too much time with Leng Ruoxue and the rest. He retreated back into the sea. Leng Ruoxue and the others were rather suspicious of the Master of the Dead Sea's escape. Did this fella escape so easily? They were very disappointed. No matter what, they should at least have a fierce battle before leaving, right? Miss Leng, we provoked the Lord of the Dead Sea so much just now. What if she were to vent her anger on the three of them? Will the three of them? Ming Ji asked worriedly. However, he did not finish his sentence, but Leng Ruoxue understood what he meant. Don't worry. The three of them aren't that weak. Leng Ruoxue consoled him. Even though she said that, she wasn't sure what the Master of the Dead Sea would do when he returned. Hence, she was actually very worried about the demon. After the Master of the Death Sea returned to the Death Sea, she did not return to her own palace in her anger. Instead, she went to the light net. When she saw the three of them, she immediately smiled and said, "It'll show you something." With that, the Master of the Death Sea waved his hand and a light screen appeared above the light net. Following that, Leng Ruoxue's voice appeared on the light screen. It was playing the conversation between the Master of the Death Sea, Leng Ruoxue, and the others. The demon looked at the screen and his heart was in turmoil. Shuer had indeed come to the Dead Sea. However, when he saw that Shuer was safe and sound, and her mental state was not bad, and that the Dead Sea's transvestite was unable to do anything to her, he was relieved. Don't you have anything to say? After the images on the screen finished playing, the Master of the Death Sea could not help but ask when he saw that none of the three of them were speaking. No, I didn't. The demon's expression was as calm as ever. Since Shuer was so calm, he naturally couldn't embarrass her. Besides, other than being temporarily trapped by the light net, this damned Rinyao couldn't hurt him at all. Shuer wouldn't be threatened by any Rinyao either, so what else did he have to be afraid of? You two don't have any either. Knowing that he could not threaten the Dark Lord, the Lord of the Dead Sea turned his attention to Ming Zi and Mu Li. However, the two of them rolled their eyes at her and turned their heads away. Upon seeing this, the Death Sea Master was about to explode from anger. Why were these hateful people so difficult to deal with? Just as the master of the Dead Sea was feeling extremely depressed, an ugly black fish swam over and cried out, "Master, it's not good. Many of our brothers have been scalded to death. Woo! Master, save me. Ha ha ha. Just wait to be boiled into soup." Hearing the strange fish's words, Ming Zi said with a gloating expression. "Woo! Master, I don't want to be boiled into soup. Help." The fish monster's face turned ashen as it pleaded for help. Chapter 2545, The First Negotiation, 4. When the Death Sea Master saw that his useless subordinate had embarrassed her, he said in exasperation, "Shut up. If you dare to cry again, I'll stew you." The strange fish didn't dare to make a sound. It turned around and swam away like a little wife, choking on its tears. It was here to report the news, so it couldn't be stewed by its master. After all, there were still beautiful fish waiting for it to return home. How detestable! When the Lord of the Dead Sea saw the strange fish turn around and leave, the anger in her heart rose again. However, she was even angrier at the three people in front of her. The temperature of the sea was already extremely high, but the three of them were trapped in the light net by her. The light net was protecting them instead, making them unable to feel the temperature of the sea water outside at all. She was so angry that she felt as if she had shot herself in the foot. But even so, she couldn't remove the light net. Otherwise, she would be the one who would be captured. One must know that she had spent a lot of effort to lure the mistress of the dark world and Ming Zi into a trap and capture them alive. How could she let them escape so easily? However, the master of the Dead Sea looked at the three of them and felt angry. He glared at the three of them for a while before he turned around and left. Another half a month passed. The fire on the surface of the Dead Sea was still burning red. The number of Dead Sea beasts had increased dramatically, and the temperature of the water had increased. Not only that, after a month of hard work by the phoenixes and fire dragons, the water level of the Dead Sea had dropped significantly. This fact caused the surviving sea beasts to panic. If this continued, the Dead Sea might really be roasted dry. Sitting in the hall at the bottom of the ocean, the Death Sea Master had heard the same words countless times. She was truly sick of hearing it, and she was indeed sick of it. She didn't expect that the other party's beastie would be so powerful. It had dried up 1/5 of the Dead Sea water. It had only been a month. Damn it! If they continue to do this, the Death Sea will cease to exist in less than half a year. As the master of the Death Sea, how could she allow such a thing to happen? Master, quickly think of a way. The sea beasts were so anxious that they were about to scratch the wall when they saw their master walking around like an ant in a hot pot without saying a word. Sob. What is master still thinking about? They were about to lose their lives. In the past month, they had witnessed the death of countless sea beasts. Although the sea beasts that had been scalded to death were not very strong, the sea water was getting hotter and hotter. Who knew when it would be their turn? After living for so long and showing off their might in the Dead Sea, they were truly afraid. The women outside were too scary. That was a demon-like existence. To be honest, their fear of the mistress of the dark world was not as deep as the fear of the women outside. At least the mistress of the dark world would not have a way to dry the Dead Sea. But that woman could. This would directly take their little lives. Master, the sea beasts couldn't help but call out softly when they saw their master still pacing back and forth. At this time, the leader of the fish guards reported from outside, "Master, another 500 guards have died." Thanks, damn it. After hearing what the leader of the fish guards said, the Lord of the Dead Sea finally reacted. Master, you have to think of something quickly. Otherwise, we'll all lose our lives. Seeing that their master had finally reacted, the sea beasts hurriedly said. Do you have any good ideas? The master of the Death Sea asked after hearing this. The sea beasts looked at each other. They couldn't do anything about it. If he had a good plan, he wouldn't have waited until now. Master, why don't we make peace with the evil demons outside? A sea beast in the corner whispered. Peace. When the master of the Dead Sea heard these two words, his heart felt as if it was being sliced by a knife. After the other party had messed up his territory, he still took the initiative to ask for peace. This was really too cowardly. The master of the Dead Sea was rather unhappy with this idea, and the sea beasts who could tell that she did not look too good did not dare to respond to this idea. They could only lower their heads and remain silent, in case their master would vent his anger on them. After saying these two words, the sea beast also regretted its own blabbering. Woo-woo. Master seemed to be even angrier. It shrank into the corner, trying to reduce its presence. The master of the Dead Sea had been struggling because of the two words make peace. As for Len Ruoxue and the others who were living a carefree life by the sea, they naturally did not have the time to care about what she was thinking. For the past month, they had had a great time. Especially when they smelled the increasingly strong fishy smell drifting over from the sea, they truly felt that the mission of roasting the Dead Sea was a great success. They believed that it would not be long before the Dead Sea would truly cease to exist. During this period of time, Len Ruoxue had been thinking about how the master of the Dead Sea would react. However, after seeing that the master of the Dead Sea was still lying at the bottom of the sea without any movement even after a month had passed, she naturally assumed that the ladyboy wanted to fight her to the death. Since that was the case, she had no choice but to sacrifice her life to accompany the transvestite. With this thought in mind, she also threw a small wisp of her flame into the sea. Her flame might be small, but its power was absolutely shocking. In just 2 days, the water in the Dead Sea was rapidly drained. This scene also made Minga and the others tremble with fear. In the past, they had always thought that drying up the water of the Death Sea was an impossible task. But now, they did not dare to think that way anymore. What was impossible for others seemed to be rather easy for Len Ruoxue. Chapter 2546, Inevitable Existence. 1. 3 days after Len Ruoxue threw her flame into the sea, the master of the Dead Sea could no longer hold it in. With a dark expression, she surfaced once again. Beauty, let's talk. The Death Sea master gritted his teeth and said. Do we have anything to talk about? Len Ruoxue blinked her eyes and said with an innocent look. Of course there is. Beauty, I know you're here to save the mistress of the dark world and the other two. I'll hand them over to you, and you can remove the flames on the sea. How about it? The master of the Death Sea did not beat around the bush and said directly. Just like this. Len Ruoxue was obviously not satisfied with this condition. What else do you want? The master of the Death Sea gritted his teeth and asked in anger. You don't have any compensation? Len Ruoxue smiled faintly. Upon hearing this, the corners of Ming's mouth twitched. Compensation? Didn't they already rob the master of the Dead Sea's city lord residence? Of course, he would not say these words out loud to undermine Len Ruoxue. He only pitied the unlucky master of the Dead Sea in his heart. When the master of the Dead Sea heard this, he was truly depressed. This woman destroyed his Dead Sea city and killed so many of his subordinates. Now, he was willing to exchange hostages, and she still wanted compensation. What the hell is this? He had lived for a long time, but he had never seen such a shameless person. Len Ruoxue's level of shamelessness was definitely second to none in the 9 Netherworld prison. Seeing that the Death Sea master did not speak, Len Ruoxue could only continue to ask, so, do you agree? If you agree to return the hostage to me and give me some compensation, I will put away these flames. Otherwise, it won't be long before the Dead Sea disappears from the 9 Netherworld prison. I need to think about it. The Death Sea master sighed. Then you'd better think quickly. I believe that in at most 3 months, the Death Sea will no longer exist. Len Ruoxue reminded. I will. The Death Sea master gritted his teeth and retreated back to the bottom of the sea. The moment he returned to his hall at the bottom of the sea beasts swarmed towards him. They looked at the Lord of the Dead Sea with anticipation and asked, Master, how did the discussion go? They want compensation. The master of the Death Sea stated this fact calmly. As soon as he finished speaking, a sea beast said impatiently, then give it to them. Sob, we can't stand this kind of life anymore. The master of the Dead Sea's face turned black. If she could give it to him, of course she would. However, most of her collection was kept in the Dead Sea City's City Lord's mansion, and that City Lord's mansion had disappeared completely. Now that he was asking her for compensation, where was she going to steal it? Moreover, she was well aware that even a little bit of it would not be able to satisfy that woman's appetite. She was quite depressed. Why didn't such a scheming woman belong to her? She truly felt that she and Lin Ruoxue were a match made in heaven. The two of them were so compatible. They were all so despicable and shameless. Fortunately, Lin Ruoxue did not know that the master of the Dead Sea thought of her this way. Otherwise, she would be depressed as well. Furthermore, Lin Ruoxue would never want to have any relationship with a transvestite. She would never think that she and a transvestite were a match made in heaven. Thus, the bold and reckless Lord of the Dead Sea was lucky. Otherwise, if he had said these words in front of Lin Ruoxue, he would definitely not have a good ending. Thanks, the Lord of the Dead Sea was in a dilemma in his own palace hall. The sea beasts were frowning. They truly believed that their master was reluctant to compensate them. Thus, after the sea beasts discussed in low voices, one of them spoke up as the representative, "Master, well, pay for the compensation, so you should agree." When he heard this, the Death Sea Master lifted his eyelids and said with a speechless expression, "Do you think that little compensation is enough to satisfy that hateful woman? We're willing to compensate you with everything we have." The sea beast continued. As it finished speaking, it opened its mouth and spat out a storage ring. Then, it poured out all the items in the ring and placed them in front of the Death Sea Master. Seeing this, the other beasts followed suit. In a short while, the compensation mentioned by the beasts was placed in front of the Dead Sea Master. Looking at the various items on the ground, the Lord of the Dead Sea's mouth twitched. There was really everything. There was even some food caught by the sea beasts mixed in. It could be seen that these sea beasts were really going all out. However, even she was not interested in such a thing. Would that woman Lin Ruoxue be interested? Did he lack these things? The Master of the Dead Sea did not think much of this compensation. However, this was a kind gesture from the sea beasts. In addition, the sea beasts were all looking at her with anticipation. She was a little embarrassed to reject them. However, these things were really too much for her to take out. "Master, we've contributed all our treasures." Seeing that its master was still silent, the sea beast couldn't hold it in any longer. "Just tell me if you can or can't. What's the point of pretending to be silent? These things won't do." After a long silence, the master of the Death Sea finally spoke. "No." "Why not? These were all good things. You can't buy them even if you have money. Moreover, many of them are specialties of the Dead Sea. They will definitely be satisfied." The sea beast said confidently. "These things are really not worth much." Helplessly, the Lord of the Dead Sea could only reveal this cruel fact. He had interacted with humans before, so he naturally knew what they liked the most. These sea grasses and whatnot were definitely not their favorite. Worthless? How could that be? These are all good things. The sea beast, who had been hit hard, was unwilling to believe this fact and mumbled to itself. "AI. Forget it, I'll just take it and show it to that woman. You guys wait for my news." The Lord of the Dead Sea was not willing to see the look on the sea beasts' faces after their fathers died, so he escaped and came out of the sea. Lin Ruoxue didn't expect the transvestite to return so quickly. While she was puzzled, she saw the Master of the Dead Sea throw over a few more rings. Just as she was about to reach out to receive them, she was intercepted by the nether sword. "Young Miss Leng, this damned Ren Yao is not a good thing. Be careful not to be fooled," Nether Sword said with a serious expression. Hearing this, the Death Sea Master's face turned black. Lin Ruoxue was speechless. It was just a few rings. Could it be that they were poisoned? In reality, that was what Nether Sword really thought. He was thinking that if he was poisoned, Leng Ruoxue would definitely have a way to save him. However, if the person who was poisoned was Leng Ruoxue, that would be terrible. So he couldn't take the risk. Let's see what's inside. Leng Ruoxue nodded her head. She had to appreciate his good intentions. Nether Sword nodded and looked into the ring through his divine sense. His expression immediately changed. Damned Rinyao, why are you giving us these lousy things? This is the compensation we've gathered. The Death Sea Master said emotionlessly. However, he was thinking that he knew that the other party would not be satisfied, and he was right. Are you trying to send off a beggar? You're using this trash to trick us. Do you think we don't know what's good for you? The Nether Sword was very angry, and the consequences were very serious. Chapter 2547, Inevitable Existence, 2. After hearing Nether Sword's words, Leng Ruoxue took a ring out of curiosity. She used her divine sense to take a look, and her expression changed slightly. The items in this ring were really complete. There were all kinds of strange fish, strange-looking black aquatic grass, and black boulders. He really didn't know where this transvestite had collected all these things. The Master of the Dead Sea's judgment had dropped by quite a bit. The items in the ring were on a completely different level from the items they had obtained from the City Lord's mansion. When Jiang Ning saw Leng Ruoxue's expression, he took a ring out of curiosity. After looking at it, he couldn't help but ask, "Why did you give us so many fish?" "We are not interested in the strange fish of the Dead Sea. Those fish are the collection of my subordinates, and so are these things." The Master of the Death Sea thought about it and replied honestly. "Don't tell me you're just using your subordinates' things to trick us. You're so insincere." Hearing this, Nether Sword was instantly enraged. "I want to be sincere, but I don't have the goods. These things were gathered bit by my subordinates. I only hope that you can let them go." The Death Sea Master said pitifully. Was he playing the emotional card? Leng Ruoxue's eyes widened in disbelief. She had thought that this fellow would continue to walk the path of a slut. It turned out that he had changed his approach. "Who are you lying to? You don't have any on hand?" Nether Sword didn't believe the words of the Master of the Dead Sea at all. He knew very well how much money the Dead Sea City could make. "I really didn't. The Dead Sea City is destroyed, and so are my many years of collection," the Master of the Death Sea said with a face full of worry. When she thought of this, she felt her heart ache. Ugh! Leng Ruoxue fell silent. Would she tell the transvestite that she had taken everything from the City Lord's residence? Of course not. However, she didn't want to see the guy in front of her acting pitiful all the time. He was really too annoying, wasn't he? It sounds pitiful. Why don't you bring us more seaweed and stones from the bottom of the sea? We don't want the fish. Jiang Ning pitied Leng Ruoxue and spoke up for her. You can make the decision. The Lord of the Dead Sea didn't dare to believe Jiang Ning's words. In her opinion, other than his face, this man didn't look like someone who could be in charge of the family. Thus, her gaze was still on Leng Ruoxue. Shuer, tell her. When Jiang Ning heard these words that seemed to hurt his self-esteem, he immediately turned around and looked at Leng Ruoxue with hidden bitterness. Well, do as he says. Leng Ruoxue nodded. Actually, she didn't expect the Master of the Dead Sea to bring out anything else. However, when she heard the other party say that he wanted to use a hostage to negotiate with her, she felt uncomfortable. She also wanted to let the other party know that a hostage in their hands wouldn't be a threat to them. When the Master of the Dead Sea heard Leng Ruoxue's words, the huge stone in her heart finally fell to the ground. Then, she started to act cheeky again and laughed. Beauty, I'll order people to prepare more water, grass and stones for you. Can you put down the fire first? No, unless you give me a hostage in exchange. Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes turned as she smiled. All right then. The Master of the Death Sea replied helplessly. She could tell that the little beauty in front of her wouldn't let go until she saw the rabbit. A beauty wouldn't compromise unless she saw some substantial benefits. What a cunning little thing. It's a pity it's not hers, woo. The master of the Death Sea was worried again because she was very clear that once she released the three of them, the beauty Leng Ruoxue would no longer have any fate with her. From then on, she could only fantasize about him whenever she thought of him. She could no longer come into close contact with him. This was truly a heart-wrenching matter. Thanks, but what made her even more heartbroken was yet to come. Just as the master of the Dead Sea was about to return to the bottom of the ocean to release the hostages, he suddenly heard a voice that was gritting its teeth coming from behind him. "No need to trouble yourself, we're coming up on our own." Upon hearing this voice, the Death Sea master was shocked. He quickly turned around and pointed at the three people in front of him with his eyes wide open in disbelief. "You guys, how did you get out? Do you really think that your devouring net can trap me?" The demon laughed coldly. The way he looked at the master of the Death Sea was as if he was looking at a dead man. The Death Sea master's little heart trembled. Then, he gathered his courage and laughed proudly. "Didn't I trap you? Master was trying to save me, otherwise he wouldn't have fallen into your trap." Mu Li scoffed. "No matter what, I've succeeded, haven't I?" The master of the Dead Sea didn't care what the reason was. After all, the mistress of the dark world was once her prisoner. This fact was enough to make her proud. "You've succeeded." Unfortunately, this is not enough. After the demon finished speaking, he grabbed the Lord of the Dead Sea's shoulder and dragged her to the beach. Then, a storm of fists landed on the Lord of the Dead Sea's body. Ah! How pitiful! Jiang Ning looked at the Dead Sea Master, who had been beaten up so badly that he had no temper, and said with a hint of sympathy, "You can be the hero and save the beauty. She will be touched and will probably devote her life to you." Leng Ruoxue glanced at Jiang Ning and suggested sincerely, "No, I'm not interested in her. I'll leave her for someone who likes her." After saying that, Jiang Ning looked at Nether Sword and the others with an evil smile. Nether Sword and the others felt the thought-provoking look in Jiang Ning's eyes and were so frightened that they shivered. They all looked up at the sky in unison and wailed in their hearts. They were not interested in this transvestite either, okay? After an unknown period of time, the demon was tired from beating him up. He gave Mu Li and Ming Zi a look, and the two of them understood and went forward to continue beating up the master of the Dead Sea. Even though the master of the Dead Sea was beaten up by the demon to the point where she could not fight back and was trying her best not to make a sound, she did not have the same tolerance for Mu Li and Ming Zi. Hence, as soon as the two of them got close to her, she started to fight back madly. This is really a huge difference in treatment. Uncle Long couldn't help but say. This should be bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Leng Ruoxue said calmly. Shuer, at this moment, the evildoer who had just beaten someone up immediately moved in front of Leng Ruoxue like a wife who had done something wrong. He looked at her with an ingratiating expression, his eyes glimmering with Leng Ruoxue in his eyes. Who knew that Leng Ruoxue would only scoff coldly and ignore him? She even turned around with her back facing him. The demon was anxious when he saw this. Wu! Shuer was angry. She was ignoring him. What should he do? In a moment of desperation, he went around to Leng Ruoxue and looked at his wife pitifully. Unfortunately, Leng Ruoxue still did not look at him. Shuer, I know I was wrong. Don't be angry anymore, okay? The evildoer begged for mercy with a fawning look on his face, only hoping that Shuer would give him a look. Seeing their master's reaction, Ming Ji and the others were dumbfounded. Oh my God! Who was that man with the silly smile? Their master? No! This was impossible. They must have seen it wrong. That man was definitely not their wise and mighty lord. His lord would never speak to a woman in such a humble manner. Chapter 2548, Inevitable Existence, 3, The Lord has been switched. Minga and the others quickly came to a conclusion. However, to their disappointment, even though they were certain that their lord had been switched, they could not deny the aura on his body. Wu, oh, the wise and mighty great lord, please come back quickly. Don't be like this. They couldn't accept it. Furthermore, when they saw Leng Ruox's cool expression as she ignored their master, and their master's expression as if he was bent on currying favor with her, they all covered their faces. They really couldn't bear to see their master in such a state. However, the evildoer would not care about what his subordinates thought of him. Coaxing his wife back was the right thing to do. Seeing that even after he had said all the good things, Shuer still only showed him her back view, the evil demon was a little anxious. He simply pulled Leng Ruoxue into his arms and thought. After Leng Ruoxue realized his intentions, she did a shoulder throw, causing the tall and burly evildoer to fall to the ground. Nether Sword and the others, who had finally regained their senses, were once again dumbfounded. Shuer, the demon looked at Shuer with a heartbroken expression, his dark eyes started to become misty. Seeing this, Minga and the others simply didn't know how to evaluate their lord's behavior. Sob. Did it have to be so embarrassing? However, when they saw Uncle Long and the others' nonchalant expressions, they felt even more depressed. It seemed that their lord had done this kind of thing a lot. Otherwise, why did they all look so used to it? My lord. Where's your integrity? Where did your noble and cold temperament go? Did he feed it to the master of the Dead Sea? The hearts of Minga and the rest were in turmoil. It was as if thousands of alpacas were howling and galloping wildly. They all wanted to kneel in front of Leng Ruoxue. Sob. Miss Leng, please be magnanimous and forgive his lord. Otherwise, his lord might do something shameful again. Who knew that the moment this thought came to their minds, they saw the demons suddenly hugging Leng Ruox's legs tightly and looking at Leng Ruoxue pitifully. Seeing this, Leng Ruox's forehead was filled with black lines. Damn it! The demon had actually learned this move. One had to know that those who dared to do this in the past had all been thrown out of the window by him. However, this was not the end. Ming Ji and the others saw that their master had lost so much face that they couldn't care less. They all knelt in front of Leng Ruoxue, tugged on her clothes, and said in unison, Miss Leng, please forgive his lord. In fact, what they wanted to say more was that their lord's appearance was really too shocking. But what could they do? The other party was their boss. When their boss was in trouble, how could they sit by and do nothing? All of you, get up. Leng Ruoxu's face darkened. She glanced at the three people who were engaged in a heated battle not far away, then looked at the fellow who was kneeling on the ground in front of her. She thought to herself, why is there such a huge difference between them? Fortunately, there were two more normal ones. Shuer, are you still angry with me? I know I was wrong. The demon asked in a mosquito-like voice. Where did you go wrong? Leng Ruox's face remained stoic. But she was finally willing to talk to him. The demon was greatly relieved. He then crawled up from the ground and said with an uneasy expression, I shouldn't have kept it from you, you actually dared to meet another woman behind my back. Without waiting for the evildoer to finish his sentence, Leng Ruoxue interrupted him angrily and glared at him with eyes that were spitting fire. The demon was dumbfounded when he heard this. Did he meet another woman behind Shuer's back? Which one? How could he not know? Shuer, I didn't see any other woman. The demon felt wronged. How could Shuer wrong him like this? Woo! He was 100 times more wronged than that. You still dare to be stubborn? Your subordinates have already confessed. Leng Ruoxue said through gritted teeth. Confessed? Who told you to? Hearing this, the demon immediately turned his eyes to Minga and the others. They were so frightened that they shook their heads. They shouldn't be wronged in this kind of matter. They definitely didn't say anything. Seeing his subordinates shaking their heads, the evildoer turned back to look at Leng Ruoxue, feeling wronged. Shuer, no one said anything. You can't wrong me. Nether Sword. When Leng Ruoxue heard this, she immediately called out names. I didn't say that. I definitely didn't say that. Nether Sword's heart trembled, and his legs began to go soft under the demon's glare. Woo-woo, why did she treat him like this? Even though he had offended Leng Ruoxue in the past, wasn't he trying his best to make up for it? Didn't I ask you before? Did your master go to see another woman? There are other women. Leng Ruoxue started to bring up old scores. Yes, but I didn't say that master has other women. Nether Sword said with an aggrieved expression. Yes, you admitted that the demon went to see another woman, but you refused to tell me no matter how I asked. Leng Ruoxue roared in anger. Thanks, Wu. It's the Lord who forbade me from telling you. Nether Sword really wanted to buy a piece of tofu and kill himself. How could he frame people like this? Beside him, Minga and the others were already looking at him with sympathetic eyes. He was extremely depressed. My lord, you won't allow me to tell Miss Leng your whereabouts. Under the demon's furious glare, Nether Sword mustered up his courage and said, I definitely can't take the blame. The demon understood. He couldn't blame Nether Sword for not explaining things clearly, but he had made a grave mistake by causing Shuai to misunderstand. After thinking for a while, the demon decided on the location of the Nether Sword. Shuai, I'm going to meet the master of the Death Sea. He's not a woman. The demon pleaded. But he's not a man. Leng Ruoxue did not intend to let the evildoer off so easily to prevent him from acting on his own in the future. Hence, she said this on purpose. Ah. The demon didn't know what to say. Wu. Shuai was doing it on purpose. He could tell. Stealing his heart, the evildoer confessed honestly, Shuai, there's a reason why I didn't dare to let you know about this. Can you listen to my explanation? Go ahead, Leng Ruoxue kindly gave him a chance. The master of the Dead Sea is a transvestite who does not care about men or women. I did not dare to let you know because I was afraid that he would have designs on you when he sees you. Although he's not afraid of me, it's not a happy thing to have a disgusting fly-like guy thinking about his woman. That's why I hid it from you and came to the Dead Sea with Ming Ziyi. The demon said with a face full of sincerity. He paused for a moment before continuing. At first, I thought that I would be able to resolve the issue here very quickly. I didn't expect that there would be an accident. The accident he was referring to was when he was trapped by the Death Sea Master's devouring net. To him, this was considered a humiliation. But luckily, he managed to break free from the devouring net in the end. Otherwise, it would have been really embarrassing. You know that there's no gender difference between humans and demons, yet you still dare to come here? Leng Ruoxue was enraged after hearing the demon's explanation. He doesn't care about men or women, but he doesn't dare to have any ideas about me. Moreover, our prisoner Padian was saved by her, so of course I have to go and get her back. The demon said matter-of-factly. You want to break the heavens? Then why are you the ones who were caught? Leng Ruoxue was speechless. It was an accident. The demon said gloomily. This time, he had failed miserably in a small river. My lord did it to save me. At this moment, Mu Li, who was walking towards them, couldn't help but interrupt. In his hands, he was still carrying the unconscious Death Sea Master. It's you, you idiot. Leng Ruoxue's face was filled with disappointment. Wu. I can't beat him. Mu Li's eyes were filled with tears, and he felt wronged. Shuai, I can defeat this transvestite. However, I was accidentally trapped by the devouring net, so, the demon quickly expressed his stance. He did not want to be looked down upon by Shuai. Yeah. If Master was at his peak, the devouring net wouldn't have been able to trap him. Mu Li quickly agreed to please her. If it wasn't for the fact that her master's strength was only at the Divine Emperor level, they wouldn't be so aggrieved. Shuai, I've explained everything clearly. You're not angry anymore, right? The demon saw that Shuai's expression seemed to be much better, and quickly seized the opportunity. However, Leng Ruoxue still rolled her eyes at him and pointed at the Death Sea Master who was covered in injuries. How do you plan to deal with this guy? The Dead Sea City is gone. This guy should be well behaved for a few days. I'll just leave him here. The demon said after thinking for a while. Hearing the demon's words, Ren Ruoxue was a little surprised. She thought that the demon would kill this Ren Yao in a fit of anger. He didn't expect that the demon would still want to keep him alive. There was definitely something fishy about this. Seeing through Ren Ruoxue's thoughts, the demon calmly said, "This guy can't be killed. Otherwise, I wouldn't have tolerated him for so long." Why? Ren Ruoxue could not understand. However, killing the Lord of the Dead Sea was not a big deal to her. After all, the Lord of the Dead Sea did not cause her any real harm. On the contrary, the Lord of the Dead Sea had suffered quite a lot of losses. When she thought of this, Ren Ruoxue started to pity him. Back then, when the Master of the Death Sea appeared, his aura was so powerful. It was a pity that before he could display his strength, he was scared away by her flames. After that, she set fire to the ocean. No matter how he thought about it, the Lord of the Dead Sea was more aggrieved. The Master of the Dead Sea was born in the Dead Sea and is the incarnation of the Dead Sea. He represents all the resentment in the 9 Nether prison. Therefore, he must exist. If the Dead Sea is destroyed, then the responsible emotions of the 9 Nether prison will have no place to go. In that case, the 9 Nether prison will be in chaos. The demon said honestly. There's such a place. Ren Ruoxue was speechless. Then wouldn't this transvestite be equivalent to a rubbish collection station? Oh. Thinking about it this way, she was quite pitiful. The 9 Nether prison is different from the divine world. Other than the natives, there are many evil ghosts. The cause of death of these evil ghosts is unknown, and they will more or less release some aura of resentment. The Death Sea's responsibility is to absorb the aura of resentment that they release to prevent the air in the 9 Nether prison from being polluted. Actually, the Lord of the Dead Sea was very obedient at the start and did his job well. However, he absorbed too much resentment and slowly grew crooked. The demon said slowly, his tone somewhat resentful, that iron didn't meet steel. Chapter 2549, Where are my breasts? 1. Ren Ruoxue understood. The Death Sea Lord had absorbed too much resentment, which was why he had become uncontrollable. He even had the intention to dominate the 9 Nether prison. However, with a demon around, the Death Sea Lord would not be able to do much. At the same time, she broke out in a cold sweat for her kindness. Fortunately, she didn't violently roast the Dead Sea dry. Otherwise, wouldn't she have ruined the demon's plan? However, this devilish brat, Master of the Death Sea, still needed to be taught a lesson. At the thought of this, Ren Ruoxue pointed at Master of the Death Sea and asked, "Do you need me to help you purify her?" Purification. Upon hearing these 2 words, Ming Ji and the others felt particularly uneasy. What did this mean? Why did their hearts tremble when they heard that? It was as if something bad was about to happen. Or were they overthinking things? In reality, everything was normal. However, when the demon heard these 2 words, he nodded with a smile and said, "All right. I'll have to trouble Shuer, just leave her life." With the demon's words, Ren Ruoxue did not hold back and immediately released a small flame. The little flame was dark purple with a tinge of red. It jumped around the unconscious Master of the Dead Sea excitedly. After a while, the Dead Sea Master's body was covered in flames that were half the height of a man. Ming Ji and the others were so scared that they took a few steps back. Oh my God! What was he doing? Didn't his lord say that the Master of the Death Sea cannot be killed? They were truly frightened by Ren Ruoxue's flames. Furthermore, the temperature of the flames was extremely high, causing them to feel extremely uncomfortable. They could empathize with her and instantly understood the Death Sea Lord who was in the flames. They did not pity the Master of the Death Sea, but they felt that if they could feel the heat from the flames even though they were so far away, wouldn't the Master of the Death Sea, who was in the flames, lose his life? However, seeing their master's relaxed and happy appearance, Ming Ji and the others were smart enough not to make a fuss. Otherwise, they would be despised again. At the same time, the Lord of the Death Sea within the flames woke up quickly under the scorching heat. However, she felt that she could not move her body. The flames seemed to be burning something within her body, making her feel unbearable yet extremely comfortable. Damn it! Who could tell her what was going on? The Death Sea Master did not know what was going on and could only passively endure the scorching heat. After an unknown period of time, the flame gradually shrunk to the size of a small flame. Then, it floated away from the body of the Master of the Dead Sea and returned to Leng Ruox's fingertip as if it was asking for a reward. It then disappeared. At this moment, the Lord of the Dead Sea had fainted again. However, Ming Ji and the others could clearly feel that the aura of the Lord of the Dead Sea was different. It seemed to be quite pure. How could the aura of the Master of the Dead Sea be pure? Could they have made a mistake? The few people who didn't quite believe it quickly moved closer to observe. It was indeed very pure. Ming Ji and the others looked at Leng Ruoxue in shock. This was too unbelievable. What's going on? Minga could not help but ask. I've purified her. Leng Ruoxue said indifferently. So powerful. I thought you wanted to burn her to death. Hearing this, Nether Sword immediately said obsequiously. Burning and purifying are indeed only a matter of a thought. Leng Ruoxue said calmly. Then, she looked at Nether Sword and said in a chatting tone, do you want to try? It feels pretty good. No. I don't want to try. Nether Sword was so frightened by Leng Ruox's words that his face turned pale. He subconsciously hid behind Nether Song. Leng Ruoxue glanced at his actions and laughed nonchalantly. You two seem to have a good relationship. Thanks, Miss Leng, please don't misunderstand. Our relationship is quite ordinary. Minga said with a serious face. Our relationship with him is just so. Seeing this, the others said in unison. In an instant, Ming Ji and the others quickly drew a clear line with Nether Sword. They did not want to be implicated by this idiot. You disloyal people. Nether Sword was so angry that he made threatening gestures. However, due to the difference in numbers and strength, he could only curse them in his heart. Sob. You can't bully me like this, okay? Nether Sword was very sorrowful. He felt that he would never love again. At this moment, the evildoer patted his shoulder sympathetically and said, calm down, you still have a little friend. My lord, you're the best. Nether Sword fawningly said. Oh. In the future, you can accompany the Master of the Death Sea and stay in the Death Sea. The demon patted Nether Sword's head and stated his decision in a calm manner. I don't want to. Before Nether Sword could say anything, someone spoke first. And this person was the Death Sea Master, who had just woken up. The Nether Sword was even more furious when he heard this voice. You bastard. I should be the one saying that. What right do you, a loser, have to say no? The consequences of the Nether Sword's anger were quite serious. Are you the one who defeated me? The Death Sea Master said with a look of disdain. It doesn't matter who it is. You are our prisoner. Nether Sword said with a smile. Suddenly, he couldn't help but widen his eyes and cry out, where are your breasts? Upon hearing this, Leng Ruoxue and the others broke out in cold sweat. They looked at Nether Sword speechlessly and thought, this is not the main point, okay? Could this guy not be so out of line? However, at this moment, the choppy chest of the Master of the Death Sea had indeed become flat. Not only that, the originally demonic face of the Master of the Death Sea had also become more masculine. His voice was also very masculine, and he did not look as feminine as before. It could also be said that the femininity of the Master of the Dead Sea had completely disappeared after being purified by Leng Ruox's flames. Oh. This should be a good thing for a transvestite who was neither a man nor a woman, right? Who knew that when the Master of the Dead Sea heard Nether Sword's words, not only was he not happy, he started to wail as if his parents had died. Woo. Where's my chest? Why are my breasts gone? Oh, my magnificent and proud chest. How could you abandon me? I'm completely relying on you to hook up with men. What am I going to do without you? These words caused Leng Ruoxue and the rest to break out in cold sweat. This fellow really couldn't be treated with common sense. Furthermore, the words he said were too disgusting. In the next second, no one knew who led the way, but Uncle Long and the others all rushed forward and gave the Death Sea Master, who had just woken up, another round of beating. After a long time, the Lord of the Death Sea, who was unable to fight back and had suffered a huge blow, fainted again. "I've lived for so long, but I've never seen such a person," Uncle Long said as he clapped his hands. "I've never seen him before." Dongfang Yu agreed. "It's good to ignore it. Shuer, shouldn't we go home?" The demon turned to look at Leng Ruoxue. "Which home?" Leng Ruoxue pretended to be confused and asked. "Jiuyou City, of course." The demon smiled ingratiatingly and was extremely obedient. Chapter 2550, Where are my breasts? 2, That's my house. Leng Ruoxue raised her eyebrows. "Yes. It had to be. What's mine is yours," the demon said matter-of-factly. "Since that's the case, let's go back." Leng Ruoxue laughed in an enigmatic manner. "All right." The demon was extremely happy. Seeing that Shuer was not angry anymore, he was relieved. Following which, he summoned the Dead Sea Deep Octopus and ordered it to bring the unconscious Death Sea Master down. The Dead Sea Deep Octopus did not dare to disobey the demon's order and obediently carried the Death Sea Master to the bottom of the sea. However, the fear in its eyes before it dived into the Dead Sea left a deep impression on everyone. After dealing with the Death Sea Master, the demon was prepared to return home. However, before he left, he did not forget to leave the Nether Sword in the Death Sea to monitor the Death Sea Master in case he caused trouble again. In reality, this was just an excuse for the demon to punish Nether Sword. As for the Death Sea Master causing trouble, he believed that the purified Death Sea Master would not have such thoughts. Nether Sword, who had not expected to be left here, was deeply sorrowful. How can you treat your loyal subordinates like this? However, no matter how sad Nether Sword was, it was a fact that he was left here. After leaving the Nether Sword behind, Leng Ruoxue and the rest left in a carefree manner. Along the way, the demon was very worried because Shuer was ignoring him again. Woo! He thought that Shuer was no longer angry. Who knew that the girl's anger didn't subside at all? "Shuer, can you talk to me?" the demon begged for the umpteenth time. "We're almost at Jiuyou City," Leng Ruoxue turned to look at the evildoer and replied as he wished. "Yup. We're going home." The demon was very happy that Shuer was finally willing to talk to him. "You should have a princess living in your house." Leng Ruoxue's words confused the demon. "Princess? Since when did Jiuyou City have a princess?" How could he not know? He turned around and looked at Muli. Muli's face was full of question marks. However, when the others heard this, they all broke out in cold sweat. It was a princess. He should be talking about floating jade, right? At this thought, they all turned to look at Ming Ji, but he was very calm. The expression on his face clearly said, "It has nothing to do with me." "Muli, you have an illegitimate daughter?" The demon, who didn't understand the situation, asked directly. "My lord is wronged. I don't even know where my illegitimate daughter's mother is. Where can we find an illegitimate daughter?" Muli felt that he had suffered an undeserved disaster. He had left Jiuyou City earlier than his lord, so how could he have known about the princess? Then where did the princess come from in Jiuyou City? The demon asked angrily. From Shuer's tone, she was clearly unhappy. If he didn't draw a clear line between himself and this matter, he would be the one in trouble. Therefore, the evildoer had already made up his mind that he would push everything that had nothing to do with him onto someone else. "I'm not sure." After Muli finished speaking, he looked at Ming Ziyi. Ming Ziyi saw that the Muli City Master was in danger of spreading the flames of war to him, so he quickly said, "My lord, I left Jiuyou City with you. When we left, there was no princess in Jiuyou City, I promise." "Thanks, Shuer," did you hear that? There's no princess. The demon nodded in satisfaction. Fortunately, he had a witness. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to wash himself clean even if he jumped into the Dead Sea. Is that so? Leng Ruoxiu glanced at the people present with a half-smile and continued to uphold the principle of silence as gold. Seeing this, the demon's heart began to feel uneasy. After entering Jiuyou City, everyone teleported back to the city lord's mansion. As soon as they entered the mansion, the head guard and head butler of Jiuyou City immediately noticed the demon and the others. He quickly came out to welcome them. Upon hearing the news, Piao Yao also rushed over. When Piao Yao arrived at the entrance, her beautiful eyes were the first to search among the evildoer and the rest. However, she did not see the person she wanted to see the most. Instead, she saw the rather conspicuous Leng Ruoxiu standing among the crowd, surrounded by them like a myriad of stars surrounding the moon. In an instant, her jealousy burned and she flew into a rage. Bitch! You're so bold to not kneel when you see this princess. The floating jade fire roared. Her sharp voice was like a sudden clap of thunder, exploding in front of everyone. In an instant, everyone's eyes turned to her. Having attracted the attention of the crowd, Piao Yao was feeling pleased with herself and did not notice that many people were looking at her with sympathy. At this moment, she noticed that Leng Ruoxiu did not seem to be frightened by her, so she pointed at Leng Ruoxiu and shouted unhappily, "Bitch, didn't you hear what I said? Quickly kneel down in front of this princess." "You're talking to me?" Leng Ruoxiu smiled faintly. "Could there be anyone else besides you?" Piao Yao shouted. "I don't think so." Leng Ruoxiu's beautiful eyes swept across evildoers and the rest's faces. She then parted the crowd and stood in front of Piao Yao. "Slut, what are you still standing there for? Why aren't you kneeling?" Seeing that Leng Ruoxiu was only looking at her, Piao Yao felt a little uneasy. However, she still held her head high and puffed out her chest, ordering Leng Ruoxiu with an arrogant look. "Kneel down." Leng Ruoxiu smiled calmly. Then, she stretched out her snow-white hand and slapped Piao Yao's face. Half of Piao Yao's face immediately swelled up, and she was also directly beaten silly. At this moment, the evildoer came to Leng Ruoxiu's side with a face full of heartache. He held her hand and said gently, "Did it hurt? In the future, you don't need to do this kind of thing yourself, just find someone to do it for you. Otherwise, if I hurt your hand, my heart will ache to death. Miss Leng, in the future, leave this kind of matter to me." Ro Ji also expressed her opinion. "Alright, I'll leave her to you. You can continue." Leng Ruoxiu said nonchalantly. Yes. Ro Ji was very happy. She could take her revenge at the same time. One should know that she had wanted to beat this woman for a long time. If it wasn't for her strong background, she wouldn't have to swallow her anger until now. Now that she had such a good opportunity to beat this woman, she naturally wouldn't let it go. After that, everyone heard the sound of slapping. After Ruji slapped her a few times, Piao Yao finally reacted. She glared at Ruji who slapped her and shouted fiercely, "Ruji, you bitch, you dare to hit me? You're the one I'm hitting." Ro Ji's smile was very gentle, but her hand movements weren't gentle at all. When Piao Yao came back to her senses, her slaps became even more vicious. The pitiful eldest Miss Piao Yao, the number one beauty of the 9 Nether prison, had her beautiful face beaten into a pig's head. The maidservants behind her were all scared stiff when they saw the fiendish Ruji. They didn't dare to help their young miss. "Stop!" At this moment, a furious roar sounded. Then, the furious Ming Xing grabbed Ro Ji's wrist and stopped her from continuing her violent actions. Chapter 2551, Where are my breasts? 3. Ming Xing City Lord, you're hurting me. Ro Ji smiled. "Ruji, you dare to hit Piao Yao? Who gave you the guts?" Ming Xing's face turned red with anger as he roared. "I asked her to do it." "Why? Do you have an opinion?" Leng Ruoxiu said with a smile. At the same time, she released a flame that burned Ming Xing's hand. Ming Xing felt the pain and subconsciously let go of Ruji's hand. It's you. I didn't expect you to come back alive. When Ming Xing saw Leng Ruoxue, he was slightly shocked. He had even accidentally blurted out the words in his heart. It seems that the Lord of the Dark Travel City doesn't want me to come back alive. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Leng Ruoxue's smile was extremely beautiful, but it did not reach her eyes. When Ming Xing saw this, he felt extremely uneasy. In reality, he really did not expect Leng Ruoxue to return unscathed. He was very clear about how dangerous the Death Sea was. He originally thought that this woman would become the forbidden pet of the Lord of the Death Sea. Who knew that she would return so quickly? How could he not be surprised? One had to know that he could not even guarantee that he would be able to leave the Death Sea unscathed, let alone the fact that the other party was only a divine emperor. Although he had thought of this, Ming Xing didn't dare to admit it. He only smiled and said, Miss Leng, you've misunderstood me. How could I not hope for you to come back? It doesn't matter to me what you think. Someone will deal with you. Leng Ruoxue smiled and turned to Ruji, Ruji, bring Princess Piaoyao and let's go back to our room. Yes. Ruji nodded delightedly. She threw a provocative look at Ming Xing, then grabbed the dazed Piaoyao and prepared to leave. Wait, you can't take Piaoyao away, Ming Xing quickly stopped them. City Master Ming Song, we can't take her away. Leng Ruoxue didn't even look at Ming Xing, directly asking for Ming Ji's opinion. Piaoyao requests Miss Leng to deal with her as she wishes. Minga said with a nonchalant expression. Then I won't be polite. After Leng Ruoxue finished speaking, she turned around and left with Uncle Long and the others. Ming Xing became even more anxious. He wanted to stop Ming Ji again, but Ming Ji blocked him firmly. This made him a little angry. Minga, that's your sister. It's just a father. I have many younger sisters like him in my family. If you like, I'll give you 2 more. Minga said disapprovingly. However, he was afraid that Ming Xing would not have his life to enjoy. Sure enough, as soon as he thought of this, he heard his lord, who had been pretending to be invisible, order, arrest Ming Xing, who has offended his superior, and await his punishment. Hearing this, Ming Xing was dumbfounded. Only then did he notice the silent master not far away. His face turned pale with fright and he shivered, my lord, greetings to my lord. Ming Xing wanted to kneel down, but the demon turned around and left. Ming Ziyi and the others who passed by Ming Xing all looked at him with sympathy, then sighed and left. In the end, it was the kind guard leader who directly captured the somewhat dazed Ming Xing and locked him in the imperial prison. On the other side, the evildoer was chasing after Leng Ruoxue, trying to follow her back to her room, but the door was shut in his face. Ruji passed on Leng Ruoxue's words with an apologetic expression, Master, Miss Leng asked you to find a place to rest on your own. She doesn't welcome you here. Shuer, the demon was heartbroken. How could Shuer treat him like this? However, he knew Shuer's temper very well. Seeing that she was angry, he could only reluctantly turn around and leave like a little wife. Not long after, the guards of the city lord's mansion gathered outside the monster palace's courtyard. They took out wood and other materials from their storage rings and began to build the house. The guards moved nimbly, and a simple house was quickly built. The demon then moved in openly. The window of the house was facing the courtyard where Leng Ruoxue and the others were staying. Hence, he could often see Shuer sitting in the courtyard. The only flaw was that there would always be a woman's painful wail coming from Shuer's courtyard, which was a little noisy. However, he endured it. At this moment, the evildoer only wanted to show how pitiful he was. Every day, he carried an oppressive pressure on his body. The temperature in the city lord's mansion dropped rapidly. Everyone was very careful, afraid that they would offend the master and become cannon fodder. Thanks however, others could hide far away from his lord, but Mu Li and the others couldn't. Not only that, but they also had to appear at his lord's side often to report to him about the situation in Nine Nether prison, especially to ask him how to deal with Ming Xing. However, every time they did this, the evildoer would show extreme impatience and shout at them angrily, "You're asking me about such a small matter. Why do you care what we eat?" Every time he heard his lord say this, Mu Li couldn't help but want to kneel down. Oh! His lord! Ming Xing is one of the 10 great main cities' city lords. If you really want to deal with him, you must first agree. They didn't dare to act on their own. In the end, the demon was annoyed by them and could only order them to send Ming Xing to the mine. However, he did not say whether he wanted Ming Xing to manage the mine or to mine. What Mu Li and the others understood on their own was that their lord wanted Ming Xing to manage the mine. Therefore, they very consciously arranged for Ming Xing to be in charge of only 10 people. To the former city lords of the 10 major cities, such a punishment was no different from the end of the world. After Ming Xing's matter was over, Mu Li and the rest did not dare to casually hang around in front of their master anymore. The demon could finally have some peace and quiet. Every day, he would guard the window and peek at Leng Ruoxue like a wife-gazing stone. Leng Ruoxue had a full view of the evildoer's every move. Every day, she would see him acting like a pitiful little pet, staring at her with his eyes wide open. Her heart almost softened. However, when she thought of the evildoer's crimes, she hardened her heart and ignored him. Otherwise, he would never remember this. Leng Ruoxue had hardened her heart, but Uncle Long and the rest felt especially uneasy. After some thought, they decided to plead for mercy on behalf of the demon. "Shuer, your demon knows his mistake. Don't be angry with him anymore," Uncle Long advised. "Yup. Look at how well-behaved he has been these few days. Just forgive him," Dongfang Yu also said. If he didn't plead on behalf of the demon, he was afraid that the demon would come after him. It wasn't easy for them. It clearly had nothing to do with them, but a certain someone held a grudge. As she listened to the crowd saying the same or similar words, Leng Ruoxue's face turned darker and darker. When did the evildoer bribe Uncle Long and the others? It was really too detestable. Looking at Uncle Long and the others' behavior, Leng Ruoxue truly felt that she could not forgive this evildoer so easily. She did not want that fellow to admit his mistakes and not change. If someone were to speak up for him whenever he made a mistake, she would be in a passive position. Uncle Long and the others would never have thought that their persuasion would backfire. Otherwise, they would never have said so much. In reality, if they had not acted on a whim, they would have run over to help put in a good word for the evildoer. Perhaps Leng Ruoxue would have already forgiven the evildoer, but now it was far away again. Those who didn't know were hoping. He didn't know how much time had passed, but he felt like the flowers were about to wither. However, there was still no movement from Shuer. Gradually, more and more cold air was released from his body. In the end, Mu Li and the others were the unlucky ones. The demon used special training as an excuse to train Mu Li and the rest, causing them to sigh every day. They couldn't wait for Leng Ruoxue to take their master away. Otherwise, they would be trained to death by their master sooner or later. Why did their lives have to be so bitter? Mu Li and the rest were extremely worried. After being trained for a few days, they discussed in secret and sent one person to beg Leng Ruoxue every day. In the beginning, Leng Ruoxue ignored them. But as time passed, she was annoyed by them and could not take it anymore. Leng Ruoxue could only surrender and let them find a demon. When the demon heard that Shuer wanted to see him, he was so happy that his tail was about to rise to the sky. He was even more proud in his heart. His idea was indeed good. Let's see if Shuer can't stand it anymore. He eagerly went to see Leng Ruoxue, but who knew that she would drag him into the room without a second word, leaving Uncle Long, Mu Li, and the rest outside, who were looking at the door with ambiguous expressions. Uncle Long, Mu Li, and the others looked at each other and smiled knowingly. Especially when they heard the banging sounds coming from the room, they were even more certain that this was definitely a good rhythm. It was the so-called husband and wife fight at the head of the bed and make up at the end of the bed. It's no big deal for a couple to have a little conflict. The most important thing was that the two of them could reconcile. Otherwise, it would definitely not be a good feeling for these cannon fodders to follow them all day long and be on edge. The next day, the demon and Leng Ruoxue left the room. However, the evildoer had been shyly hiding behind Leng Ruoxue. When Uncle Long and the others saw this, they knew that this fellow was embarrassed. Uncle Long, will be returning to the divine realm today. Leng Ruoxue ignored the gazes of Uncle Long and the others. Miss Leng, what should I do? Ro Ji asked immediately. Of course you'll stay here. Leng Ruoxue said matter-of-factly. Ruji had a husband here, so she couldn't possibly go to the divinity with her. Then what about Piao Yao? Ro Ji asked again. That woman hadn't been toyed to death by her, but she was on her last breath. Now, she had finally gotten her revenge, which made her feel quite happy. I'll leave it to you to deal with. Leng Ruoxue said after some thought. Although that woman was very rude to her, she was definitely not the unlucky one, so she didn't want to kill Piao Yao. One should know that it was easy to make a person die, but it was very difficult to make a person suffer a fate worse than death. Now that Piao Yao had Ruji, she would definitely suffer a fate worse than death. Ro Ji nodded. Then, tears gushed out of her eyes and she said pitifully, Miss Leng, I will miss you. There's still a long way to go, we'll meet again, Leng Ruoxue said helplessly. Ro Ji nodded again while sobbing. If she didn't have something to worry about, she really wanted to go to the divinity with Leng Ruoxue and the others. She knew that she wouldn't be lonely with these people. Chapter 2552, A Shocking Conspiracy. 1. There were many people who had the same idea as Ruji. When Minga and the others heard that their master was going back to the divinity, they tactfully expressed their desire to go with her. Leng Ruoxue did not dare to make the decision for them, so she turned around and pulled the demon out from behind her. What's your opinion? We can't all go. The demon said viciously. After he finished speaking, he suddenly realized that everyone was staring at him with a dumbfounded look. Instantly, he became angry and roared, What are you looking at? Have you never seen me before? Ugh! Everyone was speechless, not knowing what to say. It wasn't that she had never seen him before, but she had rarely seen such a monster. At this moment, the evildoer's face was covered in bruises and dark circles under his eyes. It was hard not to guess what kind of treatment he had received. This was the rhythm of getting beaten up. Everyone was amazed. However, because the protagonist's eyes were too fierce, they didn't dare to show too much surprise, or this guy would definitely take his anger out on them. Sure enough, as soon as they thought of this, the demon grabbed Feng Chuan, who was the closest to him and was obviously laughing secretly, and punched him. Feng Chuan kept crying out in pain, but those disloyal guys didn't even want to reach out to him. Feng Chuan was so sad, why was he always the one getting hurt? Sob. This is not fair. It was absolutely unfair. This was bullying Beastie, an act of disregarding Beastie's rights. He wanted to sue the other party for violence, but who could he sue? Sob. Feng Chuan, who had no way to complain, cried out in despair. His voice was so sorrowful that people couldn't help but feel sympathetic. However, although they were sympathetic, it would be wrong for them to offend the demon for Feng Chuan. Just like this, everyone watched Feng Chuan quickly become like the demon with panda eyes. After beating Feng Chuan up, the demon's eyes swept over Uncle Long and the others. Uncle Long and the others were so scared that they quickly took a big step back, wishing they could find a hole to hide in. Sob. They didn't want to be targeted by the demon, that would definitely be a tragic thing. Unfortunately, their wish was beautiful, but reality was cruel. After the demon beat Feng Chuan up like him, he deeply felt that it was best for everyone to share their blessings and difficulties. Naturally, he set his target on someone else, and his next candidate was Uncle Long. As the saying goes, to capture the bandits, first capture the king. Uncle Long had a high reputation among the people. If they were to use Uncle Long as a weapon, no one would dare to complain. However, Uncle Long felt a little uneasy when he saw the demon's gaze. What was this guy trying to do? Uncle Long didn't dare to let his thoughts run wild. He soon found out the demon's goal. Uncle Long, please cooperate. The demon said with a smile. Can I refuse? Uncle Long asked, not giving up. Of course not. As the saying goes, we should share good fortune and difficulties together. The evildoer said it as a matter of course, and these words made everyone despise him in their hearts. He was clearly the one who angered Schwer and was taught a lesson, so why did he have to share the blame with them? However, even if everyone had different opinions, they didn't dare to voice them out in the face of an unreasonable demon. After all, this was his territory. Very quickly, Uncle Long had also been beaten up and had panda eyes like the demon. When the demon saw this, he revealed a smile that could topple cities. Hee hee. Let's see who still dares to laugh at him now. His heart was at ease. Uncle Long and Feng Chuan were depressed. The others were also on tenterhooks, not knowing who would be the next unlucky one. However, they soon found out. After creating two brothers in trouble, the demon set his sights on other people. Uncle Long and Feng Chuan didn't stay idle either. They acted as accomplices. In this way, everyone was in trouble. And the first to suffer, not only did they not have any brotherhood, but they also began to help the evildoers. After a long time, everyone on the scene had a swollen face and two panda eyes. They even attacked a beautiful woman like Ruji. Ruji was so angry that she glared at the murderer. However, when she saw that everyone was in the same state, she couldn't help but laugh. Thanks, ha ha ha. Other than Miss Leng, none of us are left out. Ruji said, gloating over Leng Ruoxu's misfortune. It was a pity that no one dared to beat Leng Ruoxu up. Otherwise, everyone would be in the same situation. However, their chaotic battle earlier had somewhat offset the sad atmosphere of their parting. Now, even if Ruji wanted to be sad, she couldn't pretend. Ah. We can't beat her. Dongfang Lin said gloomily. How about I give you 3 moves? Leng Ruoxua blinked her eyes innocently and asked. I won't fight you even if you give me 30 moves. Dongfang Lin said, knowing his own limitations. If he were to really fight this girl, wouldn't he be the one to suffer? With that extremely protective demon, he was dead for sure. As smart as he was, how could he do such a losing business? That's such a pity. Leng Ruoxua continued to act innocent. The crowd sneered at her expression. Leng Ruoxua's mood was lifted when she saw it. Feeling Shuai'er's excitement, the demon came forward and tried to please her. Shuai'er, you've finally vented your anger, haven't you? Everyone was speechless. So they were beaten up just to let Shuai'er vent her anger? They were clearly not the ones who had provoked Shuai'er. How could they be blamed for this? They felt extremely unbalanced. However, in the face of such a domineering evildoer, they really didn't dare to make a sound. Otherwise, in a fit of anger, that guy might cut them into 8 pieces or make them stay here forever. No matter which one it was, they didn't like it. At the thought of this, Uncle Long and the others walked over to Leng Ruoxue with bitter faces to make their presence known. The red expressions on their faces clearly said, "Do you feel guilty? Do you feel guilty?" Leng Ruoxue returned them a wide smile, showing that she didn't feel guilty. Uncle Long and the others were completely dumbfounded. Sob. They knew that Shuai'er would forget her friends when she saw a man. Following that, they heard Leng Ruoxue chuckling, "Let's go. Let's go." Everyone nodded. Wait, what should we do? At this time, Minga and the others asked anxiously. Leng Ruoxue blinked her beautiful eyes and looked at Ming Ji and the others. Seeing that Leng Ruoxue was feigning ignorance, Ming Ji could only continue, "We also want to go to the divine realm." Oh. Then which one of you will go? Your lord said that you can't all go. Leng Ruoxue reminded. Minga and the others looked at each other. They all wanted to go. Why don't you use your strength to speak? Leng Ruoxue suggested when she saw that they seemed to be in a dilemma. It's not fair to use strength. Someone immediately objected. How is it unfair? Don't we respect the strong in the Nine Nether Prison? I agree to use strength to determine the quota to go to the divine realm. Minga agreed. Of course you agreed. With your strength, you will definitely be able to go to the divinity. One of the city lords of the 10 major cities, who was ranked lower in strength, said angrily. Chapter 2553, A Shocking Conspiracy, 2, Who can you blame for your inferior skills? Minga said lightly. It was obvious that he wanted to use his strength to suppress them. Ming Ji's words almost angered the crowd, but there were still some rational people who came forward to smooth things over. Ming Ziyi, who was as cunning as a fox, said with a smile, Calm down, everyone. We're all brothers. There's no need to shed all pretenses of cordiality over such a small matter. However, in order to give everyone a chance to go to the divine realm, I think we should draw lots to decide. Whoever gets it will go, and those who can't will stay and look after the house. How about it? After hearing Ming Ze's suggestion, the other 7 city lords present all nodded in agreement. However, how many of them were going? His lord had said that they could not all go, and they did not dare to disobey his orders. When someone asked this question, the evildoer didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at Leng Ruoxue. His meaning was clear. Shuai should be the one to make the decision. There are only 8 city lords from the top 10 major cities here. Just 4 of you will go, Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. Minga and the others were very satisfied that half of them could go, which meant that they had a 1/2 chance of following their lord. Thinking of the upcoming drawing of lots, the 8 of them rubbed their fists and wiped their palms, ready to fight. Wait, what about me? Suddenly, a discordant voice broke the 8 people's excitement. They looked over and saw that it was the city lord of Muley City who had spoken. They immediately felt uneasy. The city lord of Muley City was the closest person to their master. If the city lord had insisted on going, they would not have dared to stop him. However, they were not willing to let the city lord take one of the 4 spots. However, they were smart enough not to say anything. They only stared at Leng Ruoxue. You can stay in the 9 Nether Prison. This place can't do without you. Leng Ruoxue glanced at the demon and laughed. You're bullying me. I've been here for a long time. Mu Li said with an aggrieved expression. Oh, really? Then you'll have to stay. Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. When Mu Li heard this, he was immediately speechless. After taking a few deep breaths, he turned his attention back to the demon and said pitifully, Lord, let me follow you. I'm much more useful than these guys. His words had offended all 8 of them, and the way they looked at him had become unfriendly. However, he didn't care at all, as the biggest boss was his lord. Who cared what those small fish and shrimp thought? However, the demon didn't like him either. After glancing at Mu Li, he smiled and said, It's not impossible for you to follow me, but you just have to defeat me. Upon hearing this, Mu Li was completely listless. Woo! His lord didn't love him anymore. His lord had a change of heart. Mu Li's sorrow made Ming Ji and the others ecstatic. They felt that their lord was awesome. One sentence was enough to make Mu Li never love again. Ha ha ha. In this way, they also had one less competitor. How could they not be excited? Thanks. When the drawing of lots began, the 8 of them were rather nervous. They kept hesitating about which lot to draw, so they did not make any movements even after a long time. Leng Ruoxue was almost driven mad by their insistencies. In the end, it was only after she placed the last announcement that the 8 of them quickly decided on the lot they would draw. The drawing of lots finally ended. Ming Ji, Ming Ziyi, and the 2 weaker city lords among the 8 were all on the list. Those who got a good lot were naturally overjoyed, while those who didn't get to go cried out without caring about their image. When Len Ruoxue saw the 5 grown men crying like babies with snot and tears streaming down their faces, she was speechless and didn't know what to say. Did it have to be so exaggerated? Len Ruoxue sighed. It wasn't like they couldn't see each other anymore, but Mu Li had actually joined in the fun. This time, the 4 people who couldn't go became even more fearless. For a moment, Minga and the others who could go became the public enemy of the 5 people. They were constantly being stared at with tears in their eyes, but they were quite calm. Stop crying. We're leaving. Len Ruoxue, who could not take it anymore, roared. Her shout was really effective. Mu Li and the others immediately acted like a little wife who had been wronged and didn't dare to cry out loud. However, their occasional sobbing also made Len Ruoxue feel helpless. In the end, Len Ruoxue had no choice but to use her trump card, which was to tempt him with pills. Those who couldn't go to the divine realm with them were each given a few bottles of pills, including healing pills, netherworld power recovery pills, and even all kinds of poisons. The cannonball had indeed healed Mu Li's group of 5's fragile glass hearts. However, Len Ruoxue had clearly underestimated their determination to go to the divinity. The 5 of them had tempted Ming Ji's group of 4 with the pills in their hands and wanted to exchange for a place to go to the divinity with them in front of her without any scruples. Fortunately, Minga and the others had resisted the temptation of the cannonball and did not fall into the other party's trap. Len Ruoxue was also afraid that a long night would bring more trouble, so she quickly pulled the evildoer and left Joyo City with the rest. Even after they had left Joyo City, everyone could still feel the burning gazes of Mu Li and the others, which made them speed up their pace. After leaving Joyo City, they were led by the evildoer and teleported to the place where they had first arrived. There were few people there, so returning to the divine world from there would not cause panic in the 9 nether prison. Are you all ready? Before breaking through the void, the demon routinely asked. Everyone nodded, while Minga and the others looked excited. He was finally going to the divine realm. Such an opportunity was truly too rare. The demon received everyone's response and raised his hand slightly. A black light was released from his fingertips in an instant. A black hole the size of a human eye appeared in the gray space. As the black hole gradually grew to the size of a human, the demon pulled Len Ruoxue along and walked in first. Uncle Long and the others quickly followed. After entering the black hole, everyone felt the cold again. After the demon gave them a layer of protection, they obviously felt more comfortable. The black hole was still so dark that they couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. However, the people who had experienced this time weren't as flustered as they were last time. They were much calmer. Minga and the others were extremely excited about this kind of spatial journey. Although the 4 of them were all reverent god level, they did not have the courage to break through the void. Now that they could have such an experience, they could not ask for more. He didn't care if the dark space tunnel was suitable for a party, but he could hear the 4 of them chit-chatting and expressing their excitement. In the end, it was the evildoer who couldn't bear it anymore and ordered them to shut up. Only then did the 4 of them shut their mouths, aggrieved. However, the bright and resentful eyes in the darkness revealed their thoughts. When Len Ruoxue saw this, she laughed to herself. As the spatial passageway distorted, everyone's bodies began to tremble involuntarily. Minga and the other 3 were a little flustered, but they quickly calmed down. When the spatial passageway finally stabilized, they knew that they had arrived at their destination. Chapter 2554, A Shocking Conspiracy, 3. After exiting the spatial passageway, before the group had time to get excited, they suddenly discovered that the place they were in was a barren land, and there were burn marks everywhere in front of them. The flowers, plants, and trees had all been destroyed, and the house they lived in was also in ruins. Len Ruoxue's pupils, which were emitting a cold aura, suddenly contracted. This was indeed their territory in the land of demons. However, the place in front of them was clearly in a state of violent destruction. Damn it! Who did this? The Dragon Clan? The Phoenix Clan? The White Tiger race or the Rime Ice? The enemies she had provoked were just these few. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxia's anger rose from the bottom of her heart to the top of her head. Her family had been destroyed, but she could not determine who the murderer was. It was not a good feeling, and the situation in front of her made her rage burn to the peak. Where were the beastmen? She thought of the beastie who had stayed behind to guard the land of demons. Those cute beastie, could they have also been killed by the enemy? Leng Ruoxia suddenly felt regret. If it wasn't for her confidence in the defenses of the land of demons, she wouldn't have left these beasts to guard the house. Now, thinking about how she might have caused the deaths of those adorable beastie, Leng Ruoxia's heart was filled with endless regret. Shuai, the evildoer, could sense Leng Ruoxia's emotions. He gently pulled her into his embrace and consoled her silently. He did not know what else to say. He did not expect that the land of demons would be ambushed on his trip to the Nine Nether prison. Uncle Long and the others also felt extremely heavy-hearted. The leopard tribe where the old leopard was from was one of the beast tribes that stayed behind. They were familiar with the old leopard, so they did not dare to think whether the old leopard and the other beasts were still alive or hiding. They had hoped that the old leopard and the other beasts had all hidden, but this obviously self-deceiving idea made them feel extremely uneasy. Seeing their homes destroyed to this extent, they knew that the enemy was very powerful. Ha ha ha! You're finally back. We didn't wait for you in vain. Just as Leng Ruoxia and the rest were fuming with rage at the scene before them, a woman's smug voice was suddenly heard. A few figures appeared in front of Leng Ruoxia and the others. When Leng Ruoxia saw these people, her beautiful eyes squinted as she coldly said, "So it's you guys." The Dragon Emperor and the Phoenix King were the leaders of the group. The rest of the people were the elders of the Dragon, Phoenix, and White Tiger race. All of them had the strength of Reverend God level. The moment Leng Ruoxia and the rest saw them, the truth was clear. "It's us." The Phoenix King said proudly. "Leng Ruoxia, you're dead this time." The Dragon Emperor roared with a face full of fury. When the Dragon Emperor and Phoenix King saw Leng Ruoxia, the hatred in their hearts was triggered. When they thought of the things Leng Ruoxia had done to their two clans, the two of them wished they could skin her alive and eat her up. This was especially so for the Phoenix King. Even though she could not confirm if Leng Ruoxia was the one behind the incident in her clan, she could not help but link it to Leng Ruoxia when she thought about the loss of the Phoenix clan and her loss of control over the clan. Especially after hearing the Dragon Emperor and the White Tiger King confirm that Leng Ruoxia had visited their clans, she was even more certain that Leng Ruoxia was the one behind the incident in her clan. Not only that, but she had also confirmed from Wu Qing that there was no advisor by the name of Lian Wu. This further confirmed Leng Ruoxia's crime. The detestable Leng Ruoxia had caused many of the elders of the Phoenix clan to run away from home and go into closed-door cultivation. Not only did she have no one to use, but she had also destroyed her many years of management in the Phoenix clan. With such a deep hatred, wouldn't she be unworthy of being a noble phoenix if she didn't take revenge? Originally, they had colluded with Wu Qing with the intention of capturing Leng Ruoxia and the others in one fell swoop. Who knew that when they arrived at the land of demons, they could not find any traces of Leng Ruoxia and the others. This fact made them extremely angry. Fortunately, Wu Qing was proficient in array formations. After destroying the defenses of the land of demons, they wantonly destroyed the place and finally vented some of their anger. However, the fact that they were unable to capture Leng Ruoxia and the rest's resentment made them stay behind to wait for their prey. It was also thanks to the divine weapon given to them by Wu Xian that their aura was concealed. That was why Leng Ruoxia and the rest were unable to discover them at the first moment. Now, they had taken the initiative to show themselves. It was also time to settle the score with Leng Ruoxia. Thanks when the Phoenix King thought of this, he became even more proud and said, "Leng Ruoxia, no one can save you this time, haha. You can just wait for your death." After saying that, the Phoenix King laughed wildly. Leng Ruoxia frowned and replied calmly, "Are you sure?" "Ha ha ha. Of course we're sure. Leng Ruoxia, we've already set up an inescapable net and we're just waiting for you to fall into it." The Dragon Emperor also laughed wildly. With the two of them taking the lead, the elders present also laughed. Are you guys daydreaming? Uncle Long couldn't help but pour cold water on them when he saw them laughing so smugly. Old whale, you're mistaken. We're not daydreaming, you're the one who's struggling. However, as a kind person, I'm willing to give you a way out. As long as you surrender and hand over Len Ruoxue, we won't kill you. How about it? The Phoenix King said in an alluring voice. The expression on her face was as proud as she could be. Humph. Len Ruoxue had caused her to be abandoned by her family and friends. She would not let Len Ruoxue have an easy time either. However, she had clearly underestimated the courage of Uncle Long and the others, because as soon as she finished speaking, Dongfang Lin laughed and said, trying to drive a wedge between us? Don't you think too highly of yourself? That's right, who do you think you are? Uncle Long and the others immediately agreed. Don't be so shameless. If you don't do as I say today, you'll be dead. The Phoenix King threatened. Her beautiful eyes swept across Uncle Long and the others. Suddenly, she saw Feng Chuan, who was hiding in the crowd and looked quite inconspicuous. Her eyes darkened, and then she shouted, Feng Chuan, why are you here? You're with our enemy, you traitor of the phoenix kind. When Feng Chuan heard this, he could only roll his eyes helplessly at Feng Wang. He didn't deny the Phoenix King's words. Seeing this, the Phoenix King was even more furious. After seeing Feng Chuan, Len Ruoxue's crime was confirmed. After some thought, Prince Feng turned to look at Len Ruoxue and asked fiercely, Len Ruoxue, were you the one behind the Phoenix clan's incident? Would you believe me if I said it wasn't he? Len Ruoxue replied calmly. Of course I don't. The Phoenix King said without thinking. Then why are you still asking me? Len Ruoxue was a little speechless. She suspected that the Phoenix King had been angered to the point of losing her mind. Actually, the moment she saw the Phoenix King, she had already guessed that her crime had most likely been exposed. Hence, she naturally did not want to deny anything. However, she did not expect that the Phoenix King would still ask her so innocently if she was the one behind the Phoenix clan's incident. What was the difference? The Phoenix Prince was rendered speechless by Len Ruoxue's words. She also felt that she had asked a silly question, and Len Ruoxue had obviously tacitly agreed to it. However, when she saw Len Ruoxue's calm expression, she felt that it was an eyesore no matter how she looked at it. What an annoying woman. Right now, the level of detest she had for Len Ruoxue had already surpassed Wu Yan's. Their purpose for coming to the land of demons this time was naturally to capture Len Ruoxue and the rest in one fell swoop. They could not allow this woman to continue to run wild in the god world. Otherwise, their three clans would be in trouble sooner or later. Just as the Phoenix King was deciding on Len Ruoxue's death sentence, Len Ruoxue's beautiful eyes swept across the Phoenix King and the Dragon Emperor. She then said with a regretful expression, why don't I see the white tiger? Aren't you two on the same side? The few elders of the white tiger race were completely ignored by her. Humph. Of course we're on the same side. The Dragon Emperor said angrily. Oh. I remember now, the White Tiger King once swore not to have any thoughts of harming me. Why, has he been punished by the heavens? Len Ruoxue laughed as she teased, but in her heart, she wanted nothing more than to tear the White Tiger King into pieces. Damn it. The White Tiger King must have sold her out. Other than the White Tiger race, she had always thought that her movements in the Dragon and Phoenix races were extremely secretive, and she would never give herself away. However, looking at the Dragon Emperor's eyes, which were filled with ferocity, as if he had killed his father, what else could she not understand? In reality, Len Ruoxue's guess was pretty close to the mark. Thinking back to their operation in the White Tiger race, the Dragon Emperor had received news of it and raised his guard. However, he never thought that someone would still succeed. And after the dragon race suffered losses, the first person he thought of was Len Ruoxue. Because other than her, no one else would dare to do such a thing. After that, he specially sent someone to ask the White Tiger King about the details of the incident. When the two sides confronted each other, Leng Ruoxue naturally could not escape the charge. However, neither of the two clans warned the Phoenix clan, so the Phoenix clan naturally suffered. After the incident, the Phoenix King, who had learned of the situation, was rather resentful towards the Dragon Emperor and the White Tiger King for being so immoral. However, the two of them had shamelessly told her that they had never expected Leng Ruoxue to go to the Phoenix clan. The matters in their own clan were already enough to cause them a headache, so how could they have the time to care about others? More importantly, the relationship between the three clans was no longer as harmonious as before. When one family was in trouble, they naturally didn't want the other families to stand on the side and watch the show. If they were to be in trouble, they would be in trouble together. With this thought in mind, the three clans finally became grasshoppers on the vine. However, the Phoenix clan had suffered more losses than the other two clans, so the Phoenix King had gone to settle the score with the Mist Ripple on impulse. Chapter 2555 Spatial Imprisonment 1. It was naturally not easy to find trouble with Rhyme. When she saw the Phoenix King coming to her aggressively like a madman, she only felt baffled at the beginning. Later, after the battle between the two and the Phoenix King was defeated, she asked the angry Phoenix King about what had happened. At that time, she also knew what kind of blow the Phoenix King had suffered. It was one thing for the Phoenix tribe to lose their treasures. As long as they continued to collect them, they would definitely have them. However, what the Phoenix King could not tolerate the most was the fact that the Phoenix tribe's parasol tree forest had disappeared without a trace. The Phoenix King didn't even know how the parasol tree forest disappeared. This fact almost made the Phoenix King go crazy. After learning the truth, Wu Xian showed a little sympathy for the Phoenix King, but this was definitely not the reason for the Phoenix King to fight with her. However, Wu Xian was a smart woman and knew that she should be magnanimous when it was time to be magnanimous. Therefore, she kindly expressed to the Phoenix King that she would give her an explanation. In reality, after the Phoenix King had told her about the Phoenix clan, the first person that came to Wu Xian's mind was Leng Ruoxue. However, even if this wasn't Leng Ruoxue's doing, she still wanted to pin the blame on Leng Ruoxue. Ever since Leng Ruoxue's identity was exposed, the magical beasts had become more and more out of her control. There were many times when the magical beasts, led by the dragon, phoenix, and white tiger race, did not really listen to her orders. And now, the incident with the phoenix race had given her this opportunity. So, no matter how disrespectful the Phoenix King was to her, she could forgive him. It was precisely because of this that Wu Yan soon colluded with the Phoenix King. The dragon race and the white tiger race were also easily dragged into the water. According to the Dragon Emperor and White Tiger King's thoughts, if God Lord Rhyme took the lead in finding trouble with Leng Ruoxue, it would be greatly beneficial to them. They could also take revenge at the same time. However, they were still cautious and did not bring out the most powerful lineup of their two races. Who asked Leng Ruoxue to have a powerful Totoro by her side? Even God Lord Rhyme could do nothing about that Totoro. The Fog Ice and the Phoenix King were naturally unaware of their selfish motives. The White Tiger King had even told them directly that he had been tricked by Leng Ruoxue and had sworn an oath not to harm her. Hence, he could not appear for this operation, but he could provide some elders. It was precisely because of this that the White Tiger King's figure was not discovered in the formation of the kings of the three clans. Ever since the operation had begun, the White Tiger King on Longevity Mountain had been restless like an ant in a hot pot. The White Tiger race's division had also become even more serious because of this matter. Many elders did not agree to attack Leng Ruoxue. They were truly frightened by Leng Ruoxue. However, the White Tiger King had chosen to act willfully for his own selfish motives. Now that Leng Ruoxue didn't see the White Tiger King, she naturally knew why. However, she wouldn't think that this matter had nothing to do with him just because the White Tiger King wasn't around. Since the White Tiger race had sent out an elder with godly venerable rank strength, he definitely wouldn't be able to escape this. White Tiger King, you're dead. Leng Ruoxue's heart was filled with anger as she looked at the few people in front of her. At this moment, the Dragon Clan, Phoenix Clan, and White Tiger Clan had already completely stood against her, and had become Wu Xian's lackeys. One must know that according to her original plan, she had wanted to recruit these guys to give some benefits to the former Dragon Emperor and the others who were imprisoned. However, it was obvious that she had been too lenient last time, so it did not have any deterrent effect. Now, these people obviously had something to rely on, so they came to show off in front of her without fear. Oh! She would let these proud beasts know what it meant to be sad after extreme joy. With this thought in mind, Leng Ruoxiu's gaze towards them turned increasingly dark. This time, the other party had delivered himself to her door, so why should she be polite? She secretly gave Uncle Long and the others a look. Leng Ruoxiu was about to move Tsang and the beasts out of her bangle when she suddenly felt a great shock. What was going on? Why did she lose contact with the space? Thanks, Qingju. Qingju. She called out to him a few times, but Green Vessel did not reply. Leng Ruoxiu could not help but feel anxious. He hurriedly sent a voice transmission to the demon, Uncle Long, and the others. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Shuer, calm down. Without that Totoro, we can still deal with these guys. The demon quickly consoled. I know, Leng Ruoxiu replied. She was just a little depressed. If this situation was caused by herself, she would naturally be quite calm. However, this matter had actually happened without any warning. This made her a little helpless and worried about the safety of Qingju and the others. At this moment, Tsang, who was in the house, and Green Vessel, who was in the bracelet, were also angry that they couldn't leave. Especially Tsang, it was so angry that it wanted to destroy the house. Unfortunately, after a few times of making a scene, the house didn't move. The house was built by the Grand Elder. It was made of the best materials and Leng Ruoxiu had reinforced the defensive array, making it very durable. Moreover, Tsang did not dare to make too much noise for fear of hurting Shuer. After all, Shuer had brought this house with her. If the house was destroyed, Shuer would inevitably get hurt. As such, Tsang was naturally restricted. Green Vessel's situation was not any better than Tsang's. Moreover, his strength was not as good as Tsang's. After being imprisoned, he would not be able to break the restriction for a while. This made him so anxious that he was spinning around on the spot, causing Baby and the other beasts to see stars in their eyes. Although they really wanted to advise Qingju to calm down, they could not bring themselves to say it. Sob. They were also worried about their master. While Leng Ruoxiu, who was outside, knew that something was amiss, she had no idea who was the one behind this. Just as she was thinking this, another burst of smug laughter entered her ears. Ha, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it. As soon as she finished speaking, a beautiful woman in red appeared and released her pressure. Her appearance was also so sudden. However, the aura of her appearance was clearly not something that the Dragon Emperor and the others could compare to. The Divine Master hasn't arrived yet. How could we dare to attack? It would be our fault if we ruined your plan. The Phoenix King laughed. The intimacy between the two of them made them seem like sisters who had known each other for many years. Leng Ruoxiu felt like puking when she looked at these two extremely hypocritical women. That's true. You can make your move now. Wu Xian laughed complacently. In fact, she knew that the Phoenix King was not telling the truth. They did not dare to make a move because they were afraid of Leng Ruoxiu and the others, especially Tsang who was beside her. More importantly, Leng Ruoxiu had too many tricks up her sleeves that were hard to guard against. This was the reason why they did not dare to act rashly. Upon hearing that they could make a move, the Dragon Emperor and the rest didn't dare to move. Instead, they all stared at Wu Ling. Wu Ling was a little annoyed by their stares and couldn't help but curse in her heart. These useless fellows. She had already asked them to make a move, yet they were still standing there like fools. Weren't they clearly trying to watch the show for that bitch Leng Ruoxiu? River Ripple was somewhat displeased. Looking at their interaction, Leng Ruoxiu laughed nonchalantly, God Lord Fog Ripple, it seems your words didn't have much of an effect. None of them actually listened to you. Chapter 2556 Spatial Imprisonment 2. Upon hearing this, Wu Yan became even angrier. Damn it. These guys really didn't give her any face. Now, they even let her be laughed at by Leng Ruoxue. How could she swallow this? Leng Ruoxue, don't be too pleased with yourself. You're dead for sure today. Even Sung can't save you. Laughed Wu Yan coldly. Her beautiful eyes looked at Leng Ruoxue as if she was looking at a dead person. Are you sure? Leng Ruoxue said with a calm expression. Her relaxed and casual manner made it impossible for others to read her thoughts. However, in reality, she was feeling slightly uneasy. She guessed that it was this woman who had caused Song and Qing Ju to be imprisoned. After listening to Leng Ruoxue's words, Ripple Mist became even more smug. She smiled charmingly and said, "Of course, I'm afraid you don't know that I've already confined your space." Ha ha ha. So what? You can't be thinking that he's in my space, right? After confirming that it was Wu Jing who was behind this, Leng Ruoxue asked back with a smile. The expression on her face was extremely calm. Of course, I won't do something I'm not confident in. I'm afraid you don't know yet. As the Lord of the Divine Realm, I have the right to enter and exit the God-protecting pagoda. I also know that Azure is not in the pagoda. As such, he can only be by your side. You should have placed him in the universe, right? Ha ha ha. Wu Xian said with a smug expression. However, Leng Ruoxue didn't want to see the smug look on her face. She replied honestly, "You're wrong, Song isn't in my bracelet." Upon hearing this, the Dragon Emperor and the others did not dare to act rashly. However, Wu Jing would not fall for Leng Ruoxue's trick. She sneered, "Leng Ruoxue, no matter where it is, as long as it's not by your side, I have a way to imprison it. So, you should stop struggling. Today, Azure will definitely not be able to save you. I won't let you have your way. You're dead today." After saying that, Wu Xian turned around and looked at the Dragon Emperor and the others with a resentful expression. "What are you waiting for? You'll have a chance to take revenge today." Then Sung. The Dragon Emperor asked in a low voice. "That damn Totoro will definitely not come out today. Don't worry." Although she had yet to obtain that broken bracelet, she was still the master of the divine world recognized by the laws of heaven and earth. Naturally, the divine world was within the grasp of her divine sense. Moreover, with just a little probing, she was certain that damned Song was really not around. Thus, she was naturally more at ease. Her main objective today was to kill Leng Ruoxue and obtain the universal bracelet. With such a good opportunity, she would not let Leng Ruoxue have the chance to escape no matter what. Otherwise, she would not have to go through so much trouble. As expected, after listening to Wu Aisa's repeated guarantees, the Dragon Emperor and the others no longer had any worries. Since things had come to this, Leng Ruoxue had to be eliminated. Furthermore, they could not give her even the slightest chance to catch her breath. Otherwise, they would be the ones in trouble. After the Dragon Emperor and the others had made up their minds, they immediately launched a fierce attack. Uncle Dragon and the others were already prepared. Naturally, they were unwilling to give up. The two sides soon began to fight. Thanks Leng Ruoxue did not move, and no ignorant opponent dared to find her. In the hearts of the Dragon Emperor and the others, they had already tacitly agreed that Leng Ruoxue belonged to God Lord Fog Ripple. God Lord Fog Ripple lived up to their expectations and stared deeply into Leng Ruoxue's eyes. The two of them did not move and stared at each other for a long time. Finally, Wu Han could not help but sigh. "Leng Ruoxue, actually, I still admire you. It's a pity that you can't be used by me." Wu Jing's words conveyed two messages. One was that she thought highly of Leng Ruoxue and felt that she had great potential. Another was that she hoped that Leng Ruoxue would take the initiative to surrender so that she would naturally let bygones be bygones. Unfortunately, her words were like nothing to Leng Ruoxue. It was even more impossible for Leng Ruoxue to take the initiative to surrender because she was very clear that Fog Phoenix would never leave a hidden danger like her behind. Previously, it was because Tsang was protecting her that Fog Phoenix had no confidence in taking action against her, so she had been holding back. But now, it was unknown where Fog Phoenix had obtained the spatial imprisonment technique from. Therefore, Fog Phoenix, who had imprisoned Tsang, had no more worries. Although the current situation was not in Leng Ruoxue's favor, she was not someone who would admit defeat easily. She had long thought of fighting with Wu Chen, and it was a good opportunity for her to see the difference between her and Wu Chen. Moreover, with her natal flame, she believed that even if she could not defeat Wu Chen, she would have no problem protecting herself. After Leng Ruoxue thought of this, she immediately sent a voice transmission to Uncle Long and the others, telling them to find an opportunity to leave this place and hide. Now that her bangle was sealed, she had no way of ensuring their safety, especially First Elder and the others who were relatively weaker. She didn't wish for them to fall into the hands of Wu Xian because of her. Shuer, don't worry about us. We'll take care of ourselves. The First Elder knew what Leng Ruoxue was worried about and quickly expressed his stance. At a time like this, they didn't want Leng Ruoxue to spare any attention to take care of them. And, take care of yourselves. Leave this place immediately when you find the chance. Leng Ruoxue was worried and reminded him again. Even if I can be used by you, do you dare to use me? She said with a smile. What's there to be afraid of? As long as you acknowledge me as your master and hand over the universal bracelet, we will naturally be as close as a family from now on. Wu Xian said as if it was a matter of course. She couldn't help but feel a little proud in her heart. Of course, they would be so intimate that they couldn't distinguish between each other because Leng Ruoxue was the best fertilizer that she needed. How could she bear to let her go? Only by handing over the universal bracelet can we be as close as a family. What if I say that even if you get the cosmic bangle, you can't use it? Are you planning to kill me and suck my blood dry? Leng Ruoxue said with a smile. These words made her sound very relaxed. However, when Fog Ripple heard this, it was a completely different feeling. She felt that Leng Ruoxue was toying with her. In an instant, Fog Ripple was enraged and said fiercely, Leng Ruoxue, don't be so ungrateful. I invited you to surrender with good intentions, and you actually don't appreciate it. If that's the case, then don't blame me for not showing mercy. What, are you angry from shame? You still want me to surrender? There's a rule in the divine rules that if you ask me to surrender, I have to be grateful to tears. Wu Chen, we are enemies, and I don't need you to show mercy. Don't talk nonsense, let's fight. Leng Ruoxue sneered and immediately released her aura. However, with her strength as a deity emperor, her aura was naturally no match for an old monster like Wu Ling who had cultivated for many years. Thus, Leng Ruoxue immediately used her natal flames. The purple flame with a tinge of red danced happily towards the mist ripple. The mist ripple knew how powerful Leng Ruoxue's flames were, so she was naturally more careful and set up multiple layers of defense for herself. Then, several vines shot out from her hands and shot towards Leng Ruoxue. Each of the vines was as thick as a baby's arm and had inverted thorns on them. At the front of the vines, there was a suction cup the size of an adult's fist. The suction cup was filled with tiny suction cups that were the size of teeth. When Leng Ruoxue saw these vines, her first reaction was disgust. It was even more disgusting than when she saw the Dead Sea Deep Octopus claws. Chapter 2557, Spatial Imprisonment, 3. She even suspected that Wu Jing was deliberately using these vines to disgust her and make her mind unstable. Unfortunately, if the other party really had such an idea, he would have made a mistake. Even though Leng Ruoxue hated disgusting things, the moment she saw these things, she would want to destroy them even more. Therefore, although the vines in front of him didn't look like much, it would be a great sense of accomplishment to destroy them, making them misty. With a flash of cold light, a sword that was emitting a vicious aura appeared in Leng Ruoxue's hand. The sword was as thin as a cicada's wing and its body was translucent. When it was held in Leng Ruoxue's hand, it even let out a buzzing sound to show its closeness. This sword was the cold shadow that Leng Ruoxue had refined in the Hautian continent. However, she had been nurturing the cold shadow all this time and rarely had the chance to use it. Today, in order to deal with fog ice, she used the cold shadow. Although the cold shadow had not yet grown into an innate divine weapon, it had already developed its own intelligence. Judging from the aura it was emitting at this moment, this sword was enough to look down on all the heroes in the divine realm. It was just that he did not know if it was sharp enough to deal with the fog ripple. At the thought of this, Leng Ruoxue flicked her wrist and a cold shadow drew a perfect arc in the air. Then, a sword light that exuded an endless chill slashed down from the air. With a bang, it slashed onto the vines. The sound of the collision between the two parties created dazzling sparks. However, Leng Ruoxue was disappointed. Only a few sword marks were left on the vines of fog ice. The skin of the vines was only slightly cut. Leng Ruoxue was not satisfied with this result, and Han was even more so. As for Wu Cheng, he was burning with anger. Fuck. She was actually injured. She was injured. After living for so long, she had rarely been injured, other than when she faced the hateful Tsang. But now, she was injured by a puny divine emperor. Although the injury was not serious, it was still not something she could bear. There was also the sword in Leng Ruoxue's hand. She really hated it no matter how she looked at it. At the same time, Leng Ruoxue and Han were equally disgusted with the fog ice, especially Han, who had just gained sentience. It was deeply depressed by its own failure, so it flew out of Leng Ruoxue's hand uncontrollably and madly slashed at the vines that were dancing wildly in the air. When Leng Ruoxue saw this scene, she could not help but be dumbfounded. Ugh! Han was provoked. This was without a doubt. However, she was much calmer than Han. When Han lost control and continued to cut the rime ice's vines, she stared at the rime ice without blinking. When she saw that her flames had burned the rime ice but did not cause any damage to it, Leng Ruoxue had no choice but to be more careful. But what was going on? Why did her flame, which had always been successful, lose its effect this time against the fog? Leng Ruoxue could not figure it out no matter how much she thought about it. This matter also made her frown slightly. If her life flame really didn't work, then she would have almost no chance of winning against Wu Chen. She was already no match for Wu Chen in terms of strength, and now that her greatest trump card couldn't cause any damage to Wu Chen, it was no different from the end of the world. This was the first time Leng Ruoxue felt lost. However, on the surface, she was still calm. On the other hand, the Fog Phoenix had finally gone mad from Han Ying's provocation. It was only then that Leng Ruoxue suddenly realized that one of the vines of the Fog Phoenix had been cut off under Han Ying's hard work. After Han Ying had succeeded, he even circled around Leng Ruoxue in high spirits, as if he was asking for credit. Upon seeing this, Leng Ruoxue's fighting spirit was completely ignited. So what if the life flame was no longer a threat to the mist ripple? Didn't she still have the cold shadow? The cold shadow was not willing to give up and was trying hard to cause damage to the fog. As its master, how could she be weak? Leng Ruoxue extended her hand and the excited Han Ying was held in her hand. At the same time, her gaze turned to Wu Bing, who was screaming in pain. Wu Bing felt Leng Ruoxue's gaze and immediately twisted her beautiful face. With a malicious gaze, she roared, "Leng Ruoxue, you've really angered me. I won't let you off. Same, cold shadow, let's fight side by side." Leng Ruoxue gently caressed Han Ying's sword as she spoke. Han Ying trembled in excitement. Following that, two fiery red giant dragons leaped out from the tip of Han Ying's sword. In an instant, the sky was dyed red and the temperature rose. When the other evildoers who were fighting against the Dragon Emperor and the rest saw this, they could not help but smile bitterly. Shuai'er's flames were a huge torture to the enemy, so how could it not be the same for them? Fortunately, Shuai'er's fire was very intelligent and knew who was an enemy and who was on their side. So, other than feeling the heat, it was still within their tolerance range. However, the Dragon Emperor and the rest were not as relaxed as they were. Once Leng Ruoxu's 2 fire dragons appeared. Even the Phoenix King, who was also of the fire attribute, could not help but want to curse. This was really bullying, wasn't it? Leng Ruoxue, who was directing the fire dragons to attack the Fog Phoenix, saw the expressions of everyone from the corner of her eyes. In fact, she had deliberately released 2 fire dragons to test the waters. She wanted to know if it was because her natal flame had lost its effect or if the Fog Phoenix had something to rely on. From the looks of it, her flame was normal. Thanks, however, the flames were unable to harm Wu Xian, and Leng Ruoxue did not want to let Wu Xian off too easily. When she saw Wu Xian's face of vigilance as she looked at the fire dragon that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws in the air, staring at her with hostility, Leng Ruoxue's heart miraculously calmed down. Go! Destroy this poisonous flower! Leng Ruoxue shouted. In an instant, 2 huge creatures with flames on their bodies swooped down and crashed into the fog ripple. The Fog Phoenix was shocked. She quickly retracted her vines and attacked the fire dragon. Seeing this, Leng Ruoxue threw out a few more meteor showers. The dense firelight was like a meteor shower as it flew towards the Fog Phoenix and scattered in all directions. Wherever the meteor shower touched, a sea of fire would spread rapidly. Anyone who was touched by the flaming meteors would be turned into ashes in an instant. According to Leng Ruoxue's thoughts, even if they didn't burn the fog to death, they would at least leave behind some small fish and shrimps. Otherwise, wouldn't her efforts be in vain? With such thoughts in mind, some small fish were unlucky. In an instant, 1/3 of the people on Rhyme's side died, and this was only in passing. This scene shocked the Dragon Emperor and the rest. Was that woman even human? Didn't she only have the strength of a divine emperor? How could a small flame kill so many people? The Dragon Emperor, who was fighting with Uncle Long, diverted some of his attention to look at the Phoenix King. Although the Phoenix King's southern spirit leaf fire was also very powerful, it was definitely not as overpowered as Leng Ruoxue's fire. The dragon breath of the Dragon Clan was even less worth mentioning. Just as the Dragon Emperor was distracted, his chest was heavily hit with a bang. Soon after, Uncle Long roared with a furious look, "Dragon Emperor, focus. Don't look down on others. You're not my match in the first place." The Dragon Emperor roared furiously. His words had thoroughly provoked Uncle Long, as well as Dongfang Lin and the others who were fighting with the others. They quickly finished off their opponents and surrounded the Dragon Sovereign. "Uncle Long, let's beat him up until all his teeth are on the ground," Dongfang Lin said viciously. "You guys want to gang up on me?" When the Dragon Emperor heard this, the anger in his heart surged up. "Didn't you say that I'm no match for you?" Uncle Long said. "We can only fight as a group." As soon as he finished speaking, Dongfang Lin took the lead and kicked the Dragon Emperor's butt. The Dragon Emperor's handsome face flushed red as he turned around and glared at Dongfang Lin. In an instant, a giant golden dragon about 100 meters long and several dozen meters wide appeared in the air. This dragon was the Dragon Emperor. It didn't dare to underestimate its enemy and immediately transformed into its true form. Then, it swung its tail like a divine dragon and swept it toward Dongfang Lin. Seeing this, Dongfang Lin hurriedly dodged. Seeing this, Uncle Dragon also transformed into his true form and blocked the Dragon Emperor's attack. The Dragon Emperor's anger rose by several levels as he looked at the hill-like whale that was almost the same size as him. He then shouted at the top of his voice, "Old whale, do you think this is your endless sea? You're an overlord in the sea, but you still dare to show off your might on land. You're really tired of living." "Wrong, I haven't lived long enough." Uncle Long threw pills into his mouth as he spoke. The Dragon Emperor's body seemed to be on fire, and his fire-spewing eyes looked as if he wanted to burn Uncle Long into ashes. How detestable. It was really too detestable. He actually ate medicinal pills in front of it. Wasn't this a slap to its face? The Dragon Emperor gritted his teeth in anger at Uncle Long's actions. He was angry that their dragon clan did not have so many medicinal pills. It had decided that once this battle was over, it would imprison the few alchemists on Ling Ruoxu's side in the Dragon Clan and make them the exclusive property of the Dragon Clan. They would refine pills for the Dragon Clan for the rest of their lives. Ow! All of a sudden, the Dragon Emperor, who had just thought of this, howled in pain and violently twisted his huge body in the air, crashing around randomly. At the same time, its huge golden eyes were somewhat confused, as if it had gone crazy. Chapter 2558, Great Battle, 1. When Uncle Dragon saw this, he was confused at first. Why did this old dragon suddenly go crazy? When he took a closer look, he discovered that there was a wound about half a meter long on the lower half of the Dragon Emperor's body. Golden dragon blood with a hint of black was flowing out from the wound. Dongfang Lin was floating beside the Dragon Emperor with a sharp sword in his hand. Good fellow. It was Dongfang Lin who had launched a sneak attack on the Dragon Emperor. Good job. Uncle Long was pleased that these upright humans had learned to use this move. They were worthy of being taught. Seeing the admiration in Uncle Long's eyes, Dongfang Lin held the sword in his hand and revealed a slightly proud expression. Then, he flicked the blade affectionately, and his eyes were burning as if he was looking at his beloved lover. Wiping the cold sweat on his forehead, Uncle Long said with a smile, "Good job." Hee hee. I think so too. Dongfang Lin accepted the praise without any shame. At this time, Ming Ziyi, who was just a bystander, came over with a curious face and couldn't help but ask, "The Dragon Emperor's blood doesn't look normal. Why is there black?" Stupid. It's been poisoned. Dongfang Lin said as he looked at Ming Ziyi with disdain. Alright. I'm just ignorant. Ming Ziyi sweated and didn't know what to say. Based on the two lineups, their side definitely did not have as many people as that old hag, Wu Ling. However, Ling Ruoxu's meteor shower had eliminated 1/3 of the other side's people. On top of that, their side also had quite a number of reverent god-level cultivators. As such, although Wu Ling and the others' attack was a little unrighteous, he did not see the other side gain any advantage. On the contrary, Ling Ruoxu's group had used all sorts of methods. Poison, sneak attacks, and group attacks were not few. He didn't know why, but seeing this situation, he suddenly sympathized with the enemy. They might seem to be at a disadvantage, but in a real battle, none of them were to be trifled with. Today, he had finally witnessed the true combat strength of Ling Ruoxu and the others. In comparison, Ming Ziyi truly felt that the four of them had no place to put their skills to use. Therefore, they had been doing nothing and could only find those passers-by who had no opponents to kill. As for the enemies who were famous, they were all taken over by Uncle Long and the others. This situation made Ming Ziyi want to look up to the sky and sigh. This was not fair. However, in the face of the enemy's fierce human wave tactics, he felt that he should just be a bystander. AI. In a group battle, they really couldn't compare to these gods. After being depressed for a while, Ming Ziyi walked around and went back to kill the enemies. Not long after he left, the Dragon Emperor, who was still in a daze, regained some of his consciousness. The first thing he did when he regained his consciousness was to find Dongfang Lin to settle the score. You bastard! He dared to sneak attack him and even poison him. He was really tired of living. The Dragon Emperor turned around and gave up on Uncle Long, who was fighting against him in the air, and turned around to deal with Dongfang Lin. Yo! Are they coming for me? Seeing this, Dongfang Lin teased with a smile. Then, he touched the sword in his hand, and a sword light flew out from the tip of the sword and headed straight for the Dragon Emperor. Thanks, detestable. The Dragon Emperor was extremely furious. He felt that his eyes were dazzled and his head was dizzy. Could this be the after effects of being poisoned? These despicable guys. The Dragon Emperor was furious. What about the consequences? Despite its massive size, its movements suddenly became somewhat sluggish. Not only did it fail to dodge Dongfang Lin's sword projection, but it also caused it to fall from the sky and crash into the ground with a loud bang, creating a deep pit. Uncle Dragon looked at the hole in the ground. The Dragon Emperor was lying in it, motionless. Dongfang Lin was holding his sword and smiling foolishly. He let out a light sigh. Uncle Dragon jumped down and landed on the Dragon Emperor's body. The Dragon Emperor let out a cry and fainted. Uncle Long, you're even more ruthless than I am. Dongfang Lin laughed and teased after landing. You have to be unscrupulous when dealing with your enemies. Uncle Long said matter-of-factly, and then he turned to Dongfang Lin. I'll look after the Dragon Emperor, you go deal with the others. All right. Uncle Long, be careful. I'm going to find another dragon to play with. After Dongfang Lin finished speaking, he charged into the battlefield again. Uncle Long transformed into a human and took out a dagger to draw on the Dragon Emperor's body. This dragon's blood was a good thing. Whether it was for alchemy or weapon refinement, he would have the opportunity to use it. They had both alchemy masters and weapon masters on their side, so Uncle Long felt that he could give them some benefits. Although the Dragon Emperor's blood was poisonous, it could still be used after Shuer purified it. With this thought in mind, Uncle Dragon stabbed the chest of the unconscious Dragon Emperor again, then took out a small white jade bottle and collected the dragon blood. When the Great Elder saw this, he immediately gave up on his opponent and ran over. His opponent saw this and was about to give chase, but he was blocked by Ming Ziyi, who was looking for a passerby. His opponent was instantly replaced by the powerful Ming Ziyi. The Great Elder's opponent almost cried. He only had the strength of a divine emperor and could deal with the Great Elder. However, this mysterious man in black was obviously stronger than him. Wasn't this bullying? While he was thinking this, the Great Elder's opponent wanted to take the opportunity to find a way out. Ming Ziyi, who had seen through his thoughts, had no intention of giving him any way out. He punched the opponent's head and immediately made him dizzy. After a few more punches, the other party couldn't withstand his storm-like fierce attacks and became a dead soul under Ming Ze's fists in just a few minutes. After taking care of this passerby, Ming Ziyi inadvertently looked in the direction of Uncle Long and the Great Elder. His eyes widened in horror and disbelief. Who are these people? Wasn't this a crucial battle? But what were Uncle Long and the Great Elder doing? One of them was collecting the dragon blood, while the other was pulling out the golden dragon scales on the Dragon Emperor's body. Their movements were so smooth that they were simply inhuman. Just as Ming Ze's mouth was half open in shock, a few more figures ran over and joined them. Those figures were also followed by a few tails. When Ming Ziyi saw them, he continued his task of clearing the monsters. After destroying a few tails, Ming Ziyi couldn't help but look at Uncle Dragon and the others. The corners of his mouth twitched, and his forehead was full of black lines. These people, other than collecting the dragon blood and removing the dragon scales, were even in the mood to discuss the Dragon Emperor's figure. Ming Ziyi heard something like, "The Dragon Emperor is too fat, he's full of fat." When such words reached his ears, the Great Elder was even more ruthless. He said with satisfaction, "It's good that it's fat. It has many scales, enough to make quite a few sets of armor." After 3 minutes of silence for the Dragon Emperor, Ming Ziyi felt quite sympathetic for the Dragon Emperor. Fortunately, the Dragon Emperor was unconscious at this time. If he knew that someone had evaluated him like this when he was awake, he didn't know how he would feel. Just as Ming Ze's thoughts were running wild, suddenly, a few more painful shrieks entered his ears. Ming Ziyi couldn't help but shiver. This sound was too scary, wasn't it? Chapter 2559, Great Battle, 2. Turning his head, Ming Ziyi saw that his lord was showing his might. His lord's opponent had chosen the Phoenix King. At this time, the Phoenix King, who had transformed into his original form, had actually swelled up to twice its original size. Not only that, but his lord's hands were also flying up and down, plucking the Phoenix King's feathers. The Phoenix King was clear-headed. It's really too cruel, his lord doesn't know how to show tenderness to women at all. Ming Ziyi sympathized with the Phoenix King again. Then, he saw the Phoenix King being thrown out by his lord. After drawing a beautiful arc in the air, it fell directly beside Uncle Long and the others. The eyes of the Great Elder and the others lit up when they saw the Phoenix King. Uncle Long held a sharp blade and ruthlessly stabbed it into the Phoenix King's head. In an instant, blood gushed out of the Phoenix King's body, and he let out a deafening shriek. Uncle Long then punched the Phoenix King's head in disgust, knocking him out. When the Great Elder and the others saw this, they were not willing to waste even a single drop of the Phoenix King's blood. 2 more people were sent to collect the Phoenix King's blood and pluck its feathers. Not far away, Ming Ziyi was drenched in cold sweat. He couldn't help sighing in his heart. These guys didn't know how to be tender to women. The pitiful Dragon Emperor and Phoenix King, the supreme of all beasts, had actually ended up like this. Ming Ziyi sympathized with him and went back to being a bystander. He couldn't watch any longer, or he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to help but want to participate in it. It was too exciting, wasn't it? Inspired by Uncle Dragon and the others, Ming Ziyi, Ming Ji, and the other 2 elders thought that they really needed the things from the Dragon and Phoenix clan. Therefore, they started to attack the beasts of the 2 clans. For a while, the elders of the Dragon and Phoenix clans were full of complaints, and they felt extremely aggrieved. As for the evildoer, while he was eliminating the small fries of the Fog Ice School, he was also paying attention to the situation on Leng Ruoxu's side. Seeing that Leng Ruoxue was not at an advantage, she was not at a disadvantage either, so he was not in a hurry to help Shuai. Let's kill these minions first so they won't be an eyesore. With this thought in mind, the people of Fog City began to suffer again. When the evildoer made his move, it was definitely a one-sided slaughter. Wherever the dark attribute dark power went, it turned into a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Feng Chuan followed the evildoer's footsteps closely and helped him deal with the aftermath, destroying the corpses and erasing any traces. The 2 of them cooperated flawlessly. An elder of the Phoenix tribe almost went crazy with anger when he saw this. Fuck! Was this person from their Phoenix clan? She actually betrayed him, she really couldn't tolerate it. The elder of the Feng clan couldn't take it anymore. When he saw Feng Chuan's actions, he finally couldn't help but shout, "Feng Chuan, you traitor! You're a sinner of the Feng clan." Feng Chuan could only shrug helplessly and ask, "How am I a sinner of the Phoenix clan? Did I kill you?" "Thanks, The Feng clan elder who was questioning them was at a loss for words. Although Feng Chuan didn't kill them, he was indeed helping an outsider. Besides, even if Feng Chuan didn't do anything to them, Leng Ruoxu's people had attacked them all. The elder of the Phoenix tribe was slightly distracted and was stabbed by Dongfang Yu. At this time, Feng Chuan reminded him with a smile, "Focus. We're in the middle of a battle right now. Be careful that you don't end up there." There Feng Chuan was referring to was naturally the place where Uncle Long and the others were bleeding and peeling the scales. He was willing to remind them out of the kindness of his kind. Otherwise, who would care about their lives? However, not only did the other party not appreciate his words, but he also almost vomited blood. The elders of the Feng clan felt that Feng Chuan was cursing them. Damn it! How did they get there? The elders of the Phoenix clan who had come to help were all trusted aides of the Phoenix King who had been in seclusion for many years. They were the real confidants. They had participated in almost all of the usurping of the throne by the Phoenix King. After that, they had gone into seclusion because of injuries. Moreover, they were forcefully woken up by the Phoenix King from her closed-door cultivation, just because the Phoenix King said to them, "Something has happened to the Phoenix clan. It's a big matter that's enough to annihilate the entire clan." When the elders heard this, they hurriedly ended their closed-door cultivation. After they came out, they realized how serious the situation was in the Phoenix clan. It was not a big deal for many of the Phoenix clan members to leave home as they would return one day. However, the loss of the parasol tree forest was a big deal. How could they endure this? From the Phoenix King, they found out that all of this was done by a human named Leng Ruoxue. Also, the Phoenix King had clearly told them that there was someone in the Phoenix clan who was betraying them. They didn't believe it at first, but now that they saw Feng Chuan, they had no choice but to believe it. They had watched Feng Chuan grow up and were very optimistic about his future generation. But now that Feng Chuan had betrayed the clan, how could they not be heartbroken? Unfortunately, now was not the time to feel heartache. Once their hearts ached, their bodies would also feel pain, because their opponents would not let go of any opportunity to attack them. After many years of closed-door cultivation, they were quite confident in their own strength, but in the face of a fierce and unstoppable enemy, and after witnessing what Feng Chuan had done, they felt that they would never love him again. They were quite worried. However, the situation didn't wait for anyone. When some of the elders were depressed, they would immediately be attacked like a storm. This made them raise their vigilance and they didn't have the time to blame Feng Chuan. Feng Chuan saw that they couldn't care less about themselves, so he sneered and glanced at these few true ancestor-level figures of the Feng clan. As the saying goes, one cannot live with their own sins. It seemed that there was no need to rescue the former Phoenix Queen and then punish them. They should be brought to justice today. He was very happy. After enduring for so many years, he finally had a chance to take revenge for the previous Phoenix King. As he thought about this, he did not stop following the evildoer. After the evildoer made a round, the extra passers-by on the battlefield had been cleared out, and a few more people appeared to be there to play a supporting role. According to the evildoer's plan, they would first get rid of these small fries and then concentrate their firepower on the biggest one. It was not necessary to capture the leader of the bandits today. In such a situation, they would fight as a group. With this thought in mind, the demon brought Ming Ziyi and the rest, who had nothing to do, to watch the battle between Ling Ruoxue and Wu Ice. Although Shuer didn't have much of an advantage, the demon was still quite pleased that she could exchange so many moves with Wu Chen. He was very clear that Shuer was never someone who would easily admit defeat, even if her opponent was Wu Chen. In comparison, Wu Yan was already showing signs of impatience, especially when she was injured and could not defeat her opponent after a long time. The frustration and anger in her heart almost caused the flames on her body to burn. Her bloodshot red eyes glared at Ling Ruoxue with hatred. She could not understand why such a weak ant was so difficult to deal with. One must know that in order to deal with Ling Ruoxue, she had thought of all the methods she could think of and had also made ample preparations. However, in the current situation, other than Ling Ruoxue being in a slightly sorry state and having suffered some light injuries, her body was as agile as a slippery loach, making it impossible for her to catch her. Chapter 2560, Great Battle, 3, Wu Wan was going crazy. She had made ample preparations and was determined to capture Ling Ruoxue alive. After sucking her blood dry, she would snatch the universal bracelet and become the true master of the divine realm. This was her dream, so she wouldn't allow anyone to stop her. No matter who it was, she would kill anyone who stood in her way. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of evildoer and the others who were watching and couldn't help sneering. She was a divine master, and she had the best resources in the divine realm. Even if the other party were to use the human wave tactic to gang up on her, she was not afraid. Seeing that Wu Xiao didn't take them seriously, Ming Ziyi asked in a loud voice, "Master, should we go and help?" "Go." The demon laughed. It was good to have more people to distract the fog. With the demon's words, Minga and the rest rushed out in an instant, joining the battle between Ling Ruoxue and Wu Han. Seeing that the other party was indeed ganging up on them, Wu Han could not help but be a little angry. "You shameless guys, what kind of skill is it to fight with numbers?" Although she didn't care how many people there were on the other side, she couldn't let them have an easy time. That was what she was thinking at the moment. As she spoke, she stretched out a few more vines and whipped Minga and the others. When Minga and the others saw the approaching vines, they immediately dodged and slashed at the vines with their weapons. With a loud bang, the vines did not move at all, but their weapons were shattered. This vine was actually so sturdy. Minga and the others were dumbfounded. Seeing this, Wu Jing couldn't help but laugh wildly, "Ha ha ha. You ants, I won't let you off." After saying that, Wu Xian's attack became even more fierce. She had been unable to defeat Lin Ruoxue for a long time, but when she saw that she had finally achieved some results in dealing with Ming Ji and the others, she felt a little more at ease. However, she immediately thought of Lin Ruoxue, who was extremely difficult to deal with, and her heart was deeply entangled and depressed. Damn it! The strength of these few people was obviously above Lin Ruoxue's, but why was it that Lin Ruoxue could not bite through them? She could not understand. However, in order to regain the confidence that she had lost to Lin Ruoxue, she decided to focus her attacks on Ming Ji and the others. Otherwise, if they continued to fight like this, she was afraid that she would be angered to death before she could even finish off Lin Ruoxue. Moreover, there were only a few people left on her side. Wu Yan squinted her beautiful eyes that were spitting fire. She felt quite pained about the losses on her side. Although she had made sufficient preparations before coming, it was a pity that the plan was not as fast as the change. The people she had brought were obviously not enough. As she thought of this, she sent a message to the Divine Master's estate while attacking the other party, ordering them to quickly transfer more people over. Now, she already felt how difficult it was to deal with ants. Although her previous human wave tactic had failed, she didn't want to give these people the chance to watch the fun, and she didn't want them to have the chance to sneak attack her. In an instant, Fog Ice also made the same decision as the demon. They would get rid of the small ones first. However, the small fry in her eyes had the strength of a reverent god. As for Ming Song and the others, they didn't know that they had been regarded as pushovers by the rime ice. They thought that the rime ice had suddenly gone crazy and changed its attack to attack them. However, they were still very proud to be able to give the future Nether Empress a chance to catch her breath. Lin Ruoxue didn't think much of it when she saw that the Fog Phoenix had changed her main target. She quickly took out some pills to heal her injuries and replenish her divine power. Taking the opportunity to recover, she rested for a moment before raising her sword and commanding the 2 fire dragons in the sky to fight the Fog Phoenix. Wu Han was outnumbered. She had to deal with Ming Ji and the others, and at the same time, she had to divert her attention to deal with the attacks in the sky. Such a situation made her feel angry. Damn it! The other party was too despicable. Her heart was filled with hatred, but she had forgotten that she was the one who had led her men to launch a sneak attack on Lin Ruoxue and the others. As for Lin Ruoxue and the others, they had only been passively defending and retaliating at the right time. Then, she saw Lin Ruoxue throw a few more weapons at Ming Ji and the others, and the anger in her heart grew even more. Looking at Wu Aisa's flushed face, which was twisted in anger, Lin Ruoxue was really worried that she would have high blood pressure and a heart attack. When Minga and the others saw that the weapons Lin Ruoxue had given them were even better than the one they had previously broken, they were overjoyed. Their confidence was instantly boosted, and they brandished their new weapons and attacked Ripple Mist. Lin Ruoxue could not help but feel embarrassed when she saw their determination. At the same time, she was glad that she did not have the habit of placing all her eggs in the same basket. She would always place some equipment and pills in her storage ring. Otherwise, she would be at a loss. Thanks people. As expected, he had to make many preparations in case of emergency. After Lin Ruoxue was done sighing, she was about to launch another attack when the demon grabbed her arm. Lin Ruoxue looked at the evildoer suspiciously. Her beautiful face was filled with confusion. What's wrong? Let's take a break and let them practice, the demon pointed at Minga and the others. All right then. Lin Ruoxue nodded her head before joining the evildoer in watching. She carefully observed every move of the Fog Phoenix, but she couldn't understand why the Fog Phoenix was suddenly not afraid of her own life flame. Thinking of this, she asked the evildoer softly, by the way, do you know anything that can resist the Chaos Divine Flame? She believed that there was no problem with her natal flame. In that case, there should be a problem with Fog Phoenix. If she didn't figure it out, it would be impossible to deal with Fog Phoenix in a short time. However, when she thought of the beasts that died because of her in the land of demons, her hatred for Fog deepened. First, it was her master. Then, it was the innocent beasts in the land of demons. She must not let Mice continue to run wild like this. Otherwise, she would be letting her master down. She would be letting down the beasts that were sacrificed because of her. Resist the chaos divine fire. When the demon heard Ruoxia's words, he furrowed his brows and began to think hard. In the end, the evildoer shook his head. I've never heard of anything that can resist the chaotic divine fire. However, although your master is an idiot, he is a god of instrument and he also has the chaotic divine fire. It is possible for him to make an armor that can resist the chaotic divine fire. After listening to the demon's analysis, Ruoxia nodded. It was indeed possible. Furthermore, she had heard Huan Qin say that after her master had fallen, many precious innate divine weapons had fallen into the hands of Wu Ling. In that case, it was only logical that Wu Ling had something to rely on. Master! Do you know what a detestable ingrate you've raised? Not only did she kill you, but she also tried to kill your disciple. If you knew that this day would come, would you regret it? Ruoxia asked herself honestly. She would never be as sentimental as her master. She was a person who dared to love and hate. If someone dared to betray her, even if she had to chase him to the ends of the earth, she would still destroy that person. A traitor had no right to live in this world, and she would never give a traitor another chance to hurt herself. So, those who dared to betray her had to be prepared to die. As for Wu Wan, she was her greatest enemy in her life. It was either you die or I die, there was absolutely no possibility of coexistence between the two. This was especially so after the other party had killed so many beasties from the demonic lands. Ruoxia had already sentenced him to death in her heart. After observing the situation on the battlefield for a while, Ruoxia had to admit that Wu Chen was indeed very strong. Other than when she was fighting, Wu Chen was helpless. However, against anyone else, even if it was one against many, Wu Chen would definitely have the upper hand. Ruoxia could not understand why this would happen. She was only a deity emperor and Wu Xian did not even treat reverent god-level cultivators as a threat. Why would she be so restrained when she was fighting against Ruoxia? Was he afraid of hurting her? She knew very well that after Wu Yan found out about her identity, she had been wanting to eat her. In order to confirm her suspicions, Ruoxia rushed to the center of the battlefield and swung her sword at Wu Jing's rattan. Wu Jing felt the menacing chill and immediately retracted her rattan to avoid Ruoxia's attack. However, the speed of the sword light was too fast. The rattan was unable to dodge in time and was struck by another sword. Ripple of Mist was furious. Damn it, why did this damn woman come up again? Ripple Mist didn't want her to join in the fun at all because she wanted to focus on Ruoxia after killing the rest of her underlings. However, from the looks of it now, that wasn't possible. Ruoxia would never let her have her way. Seeing the flames burning on Wu Jing's body, Ruoxia smiled and said, Wu Yan, let's continue the battle. Damn it! Who wants to fight with you now? It wasn't easy for her to regain some confidence from someone else. Naturally, she didn't want to give it all back to that sly fox, Ruoxia. However, Ruoxia clearly wasn't asking for her opinion. She didn't care how dark Wu Ling's expression was as she released a few fire dragons with her natal flames and started to surround and attack her. When Ripple Mist saw this, she couldn't help but curse in her heart. At the same time, she had to be on high alert against Ruoxia. She knew that Ruoxia was harder to deal with than any of the reverent god-level experts here. Ruoxia naturally lived up to her expectations and carried out the word difficult to deal with to the end. Other than the fire dragon, she also conjured a few fire phoenixes to deal with the fog phoenix. In an instant, the dragon's cry and phoenix's cry resounded in the sky. The moisture in the surrounding air was sucked dry in an instant. However, the rippling fog mask was rather calm in the face of such a situation. After throwing out a few vines to entangle with the dragons and phoenixes that were conjured, her beautiful eyes were completely focused on Ruoxia. Their gazes met.